Salute, salute, salute. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Can y'all hear me out there, man? Yeah, man. We got some movement when it comes to the Epstein files, guys. Yeah, Epstein's personal assistant, guys, has came out and gave us brand new names when it comes to the whole entire Epstein situation. Make sure y'all are double tapping that screen, man. That's how you hit the like button. Also, on top of that, man, we got Pam Bundy, guys, who was recently diagnosed with cancer, but has been called back, to testify in front of Congress, guys. Yeah, it's a lot going on. I wonder what she said or didn't say. Yeah, y'all remember the first time they interviewed Pam Bundy, she was quick on her feet. She wasn't really just going along with anything they had to say, guys, when it came to that first deposition. This time it was closed door, so there wasn't any cameras allowed inside. But I think what some of the people who heard it had to say will most definitely shock you guys, man. Make sure y'all voting on that poll at the bottom of the chat. Hey, my mother's keeper, what's up? What's up? We over here on content. What's up, Country James? Yeah, man, it's a lot going on in politics right now, man. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you guys are taking time to double tap that screen. That's how you hit that like button. We most definitely finna get into a bit of both, man. We're gonna see what Pam Bundy had to say, and we're gonna also see what some of the survivors had to say about the testimony that was given today by Miss Pam Bundy. They most definitely are pushing for transparency, guys. So we're most definitely gonna take a look at both of these situations. But yeah, man, not only was Pam Bundy brought in for a deposition, but they also brought in for a deposition one of Jeffrey Epstein's assistants, guys. What's up, Gillian? Yeah, man. And she gave us some brand new names, that haven't been mentioned within this whole situation. Hey, Miss Karen. Yeah, man. So it's a lot going on. I think we're going to go here first. Man, even the guards who were watching Epstein the night that he allegedly unalived himself, they have been questioned as well, guys. They have gave sworn depositions as well. So yeah, man, it's a lot going on, man. It's a lot going on. Shout out to everybody that's entering the building. What's up? What's up? Make sure y'all double tapping that screen, guys. What's up with it, Southern Gale? Make sure you double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button over here. Share the live if you have a channel. Let them know that we most definitely talking about things going on in the Epstein situation, guys. All right, hold on. Let me get this up here for y'all so we can get this started, man. We're gonna start right here with the assistant, guys. In the breaking news about what she potentially had to say, when it comes to this whole entire Epstein situation, guys. Yeah, man, they say she was dropping bombshells. We're about to see, man. Make sure y'all double tapping that screen, get the likes up. We're also gonna hear about the guard that was on duty, or guards, because there was two, guards on duty that night. We also going to hear from them because they most definitely had to testify in front of Congress as well. Well, at least one of them anyway. Hold on real quick. Let me get this right for y'all. Hold up. All right, hold on. Yeah, we most definitely finna take a look, as they let us know that there are brand new names, guys, being brought up in this whole entire situation. Double tap that screen, guys. Get those likes up. Let's get right into it, man. This is about the assistant as well as the guard that was on duty tonight that Epstein unalived, guys. So both of them have been called in for their testimonies.
On duty August 10th, 2019, the day that the convicted sex offender was found dead in his New York City jail cell. Noel and the other guard were fired and charged with conspiracy and falsifying records for failing to check on Epstein, but the Justice Department dropped the charges under an agreement that included her cooperation with an Inspector General review. Democratic Congressman Suha Subramaniam was one of the committee members who deposed Noel today behind closed doors. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. So Epstein's death was officially ruled a suicide. Do you believe that it was a suicide? And what role do you think this prison guard played, if any?
Yeah, I do believe it was a suicide, just based on this as well as other evidence we've got.
Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Make sure y'all hitting that like button.
How was he able to commit suicide? That's the real question here. And one, it was because of negligence on her part, but really she was part of a system that was negligent to begin with. There was a culture of not doing the protocols that were in place to prevent something like this. And two, Jeffrey Epstein was given preferential treatment. It was very clear, and something I learned even more during this interview today. He was giving.
They say he was given presidential treatment while in jail, guys.
CPAP machine, which had a long wire that he could have used to kill himself. He's giving extra bed linens somehow, and she doesn't know how.
What's up, Bob?
That's how he killed himself, by hanging himself with the bed linens. And then he was also given lots of access to medications that no other prisoner was given. And so it's pretty amazing. And you'd think, okay, well, we've solved this problem. But no, we haven't, because Ghislaine Maxwell right now is in minimum security prison with basically an assistant, following her around. And so the same problems that are in the Justice Department then are in it today. And so we haven't solved any of this, and we need to.
We have any idea how he got all those special treatments?
She didn't know herself. Yeah, all she knew was that he had all these access to medication. She thought that was really bizarre and interesting. Yeah. She didn't know why he, of all people, got this machine with this long cord to help him sleep, apparently. And then she didn't know why he
presidential treatment. He had a breathing machine in jail, guys. You know what I'm saying? That had everybody baffled. Yeah, he also had that money too. That's probably how he was able to get presidential treatment.
Extra linen. So that's how he was able to hang himself.
What was the most important information you learned today?
Just the preferential treatment and the fact that there was such a systemic problem in the correctional facility. And somehow a billionaire was able to get this preferential treatment and be able to game the system to take his own life and avoid the consequences. So you needed both. You needed the preferential treatment and you needed the systemic issues. And that's sort of the theme of this entire investigation, is the fact that our system is broken and billionaires are treated differently than the rest of the people.
That facility is a federal facility, right?
It is.
So,
yes.
I mean, I would think that you could
What's up, Mike?
Theoretically ask whoever was the head of the Bureau of Prisons at the time. And
preferential. Okay, my bad. I thought they said presidential. It's all good, Mike. Preferential.
Director, and all the way, and figure out somebody did that for him, right? Somebody was told, and I would think in that direction maybe you could.
Yeah, she pointed to the head of the facility, the manager of the facility, as someone who would have had to sign off on these things. And so we're going to ask more questions about this. But just generally, this is a huge problem. We need to fix this top to bottom.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you see what I'm saying there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody did that, and somebody told that person to do it, and why? Why were they told?
That's the guard right there, guys. This is the guard, the black lady. She was working the jail where Epstein unalive, guys. She was Googling his name, basically on the night he unalive. Yeah, and basically her and another black guy, were basically brought up on charges for negligence of not doing their job, guys. I wonder what they was really doing while they was supposed to be watching the inmates.
So we don't want him having trouble sleeping.
She doesn't know, and that's the beauty of this investigation. We ask one person questions, and it brings up a whole new set of questions.
Yeah. The Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, sat before your committee earlier this month to answer questions about his past interactions with Epstein, which he had not been fully honest about. You called on him to resign. You claimed he was dishonest. Was his testimony not honest?
No, well, he told us that he'd never sat down with Jeffrey Epstein after his first visit with him. And then he admitted that he went to his island and sat down with him. And he said, oh, well, that's different because it was with my family. He still sat down with him. He was still in the same room with him 2 more times. And so he was not being honest with us. I mean, he was playing with the English language and, trying to say the definition of I.
Yeah, she was the last one.
But the reality was he just didn't want to fess up to the fact that he wasn't honest in the first place.
All right, Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, Democrat of Virginia, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Right now in New York's Tribeca neighborhood, the entirety of the Epstein files, at least those who have been released, there's still a few million that have not, are on display in the form of a public library dubbed the Donald J. Trump
thank you for the gift.
Memorial Reading Room.
Did y'all just hear that?
Exhibition
he said a majority of them which have not been released. Half. They only released half of the files, but Pam Bundy was talking about they was through.
Of 3.5 million pages and put together by the nonprofit Institute of Primary
Science
is free to anyone over the age of 16 to access. Today, Epstein survivors were there to address the pain they say they've endured at the hands of the Justice Department and its handling of the Epstein files.
our government, and specifically the DOJ, has not done its job to pursue investigative leads. Yet, again and again, survivors are always asked to do more. We're always asked to name the names. It's something that we hear over and over and over again. And guess what we have? We actually have it to Congress, to the FBI, in spaces behind closed doors many, many times, but clearly that doesn't seem to do it.
Joining us now is the Epstein survivor you
Say
just
he
saw
want to
there,
see
a
the
strong
files.
woman named Danny
He want to see
Fenske.
the
Danny,
files. Clinton got.
Tell us what it was like
Hey,
for you
Paulette.
to walk into this exhibit.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jake. It really does blow the mind when you stand there amongst so many different files and just binders and binders of information. And to constantly hear that there are no investigative leads when, within the first hour of us being there, and each of us had 10 minutes and we talked about a different topic and a different person. And basically within
Make sure you guys are double tapping that screen. Everybody coming in, make sure you double tap the screen. That's how you hit the like button. You can only hit it one time. If you can't double tap the screen of your mobile device, click the 3 dots in the right hand corner and hit that thumbs up. That's another way to like the live. Shout out to everybody in the building.
first hour. There's so much that needs to be investigated, and we've been saying that from the very beginning. And I'd like to just say, it's a partial release so far. We haven't seen the full release. I started today by talking about Maria Farmer's report, and it's only the first page that's even there. And she did name the names, and we can't seem to find the rest of that report. So it's bittersweet to be in there.
That's
So
one of the survivors,
it's not
guys.
fair to ask you for names because as
She is one of the survivors right here of Epstein that he's talking to, just so y'all know.
you've noted in the remarks, you have told them to the FBI, you have told them to Congress, you have told them, and naming these names publicly
Thank you
exposes
for the gifts, Von.
to lawsuits and also to harassment. But just to be clear, can you describe, without the names, can you describe things in the files that you saw that the Justice Department should be following up on?
Yeah, I think across the board, women have been really scared to tell our stories outwardly because we are not moving through these legal channels, and we need to, right? So, within an hour, the first thing that we heard about, we talked about Mount Sinai and sort of what's gone on there, and seeing that members of the medical community are totally violating their oath, and Eva Dubin's name is all over the place. It doesn't take that much more time to look into Virginia's deposition and see that her husband, Glenn Dubin, is also all over the place. So these are names that definitely need to be investigated. We saw a text message about Leon Black where there was a woman who it alluded to her being under extreme duress when she had to sign an NDA. That's an investigative lead that needs to be looked into. We had another moment where we heard from Richard Kahn assisting with large cash withdrawals, right? Like, these are all things that our government should be able to really look into, and they're not looking into it. And this is public information. This isn't me sitting here talking about my personal story. This is us opening a file and reading the file. We have said time and time again that it's in the files. Please look in the files, and nobody seems to want to do that. And so we're bringing the files to the American people.
This pop-up gallery also has a display of the long-standing friendship between Epstein and President Trump, the timeline charting their connections over the decades. The organization behind the exhibit says this is to create public outcry over the Justice Department covering up Trump's ties to Epstein. What are your thoughts surrounding accountability for President Trump and for others who have had connections with Epstein?
We've said from the beginning.
Shout out to you for that 5, my mother's keeper. She says, happy Friday, Mahir. Thanks for bringing the news. Absolutely. You already know. And happy Friday to you as well, my mother's keeper. Thank you.
Every single time we're on the show, that it's not political for us, but something that I do think stands out in this exhibit is the friendship between the two of them.
Shout out to the gifts. I see the gifts as well. Thank y'all for the gifts.
Their proclivities are and what they're doing behind closed doors. So I do wonder if he knew anything. And I do believe that anybody that knows anything in this case needs to come forward.
Newly released documents show it was Queen Elizabeth's wish to have her son, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Prince Andrew, appointed as UK trade envoy. The then prince, took on the role in 2001. A minister today saying the British government found no evidence that he was vetted prior to the
That's
appointment.
the one that had them girls down on the floor in them pictures. Prince Andrew. He got arrested for this as well.
He stepped down more than a decade later over his ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Mountbatten Windsor was arrested earlier this year on suspicion of misconduct in public office following fallout from the release of the Epstein files. We're joined now by Eric Fudali, an attorney who represents 11 Epstein accusers. Eric, thanks for coming back on the program. I wonder how, as you're looking at this reporting, how the decision is aging, that desire of the Queens to have Andrew in this role and his apparent placement in it without vetting.
Well, it's certainly not aging well, given what we know about Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, and Jeffrey Epstein's relationship, to sort of frame it some way, right? We absolutely know that Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein were very closely aligned, spent a lot of time together. And of course, there's been very salacious allegations against Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, for which the reporting is that he actually settled the case for a substantial amount of money. So it has certainly not aged well. And really the relationship between former Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein is something that I think continues to need to be investigated. I appreciate that there's been some level of perhaps accountability in Great Britain with his brief arrest, but I still think that there needs to be a lot more investigation, tough questions, and looking into what former Prince Andrew did alongside with Jeffrey Epstein and what actually their relationship entailed.
Today, the House Oversight Committee is interviewing Sarah Kellen, a longtime Epstein assistant, a potential co-conspirator. That's how. Okay,
so here we go. We get to them telling you her name. Jeffrey Epstein's former assistant, who came out with his name with these names. Her name is Sarah.
Florida federal prosecutors considered her as they investigated Epstein almost 20 years ago. But Chairman Comer said they're split, the committee is, on whether to treat her as a victim or a perpetrator. How are you looking at this?
Split as well. I think that's a fair assessment of it. This is a very, very complicated case. Now, I obviously cannot speak to the specific details of Ms. Kellen's relationship or what she actually did alongside Jeffrey Epstein. What I can say generally, however, is that Jeffrey Epstein was a master manipulator. And he was very adept and very good at manipulating those very people who he had power over, and also other powerful people to doing whatever he wanted. Now, again, Ms. Kellen, of course, was an adult and she can make her own, she has to be accountable for her own decisions. But I can say generally that Jeffrey Epstein did victimize a lot of women and did also manipulate a lot of those victims into helping him facilitate finding other victims. So yeah, I agree that this is sort of very split. It is a very complicated case as to how this interview is approached. What I will say is not complicated is that she may be a source of information. She is someone who was very close to Jeffrey Epstein for a long period of time, especially after 2008, the sweetheart deal. She continued to be associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think it's very important to learn what she saw and perhaps even who she saw closely aligned with Jeffrey Epstein after 2008. Because remember, after 2008, despite the fact that he got a very sweetheart deal, Jeffrey Epstein was a registered sex offender.
Sarah says she bringing brand new names to the board, guys.
That was public knowledge. So I hope the committee uses her interview as a means of getting actual information about who continued to closely align themselves, closely associate with, and hopefully perhaps even closely facilitate a registered public sex offender.
Sources tell CNN that lawmakers investigating convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein are turning their attention right now to three men who yesterday were accused by Epstein's longtime assistant, Sarah Kellen, of sexual abuse during her closed-door testimony with the House Oversight Committee. Sources told CNN that Kellen named these three men, Frederic Fekkai, a French celebrity hairstylist whose representatives deny that he's done anything wrong, Philip Levine, the former mayor of Miami Beach and a cruise industry entrepreneur, and Patrick Demarchelier, a French fashion photographer. CNN reached out to Levine and to representatives for Demarchelier, who died.
Let's go. One more time. These are the three men.
Sources tell CNN that lawmakers investigating convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein are turning their attention right now to three men who yesterday were accused by Epstein's longtime assistant, Sarah Kellen, of sexual abuse during her closed-door testimony with the House Oversight Committee. Sources told CNN that Kellen named these three men, Frederic Fekkai, a French celebrity hairstylist whose representatives deny that he's done anything wrong, Philip Levine, the former mayor of Miami Beach and cruise industry entrepreneur, and Patrick Demarchelier, a French fashion photographer. CNN reached out.
I most definitely have never heard these names before, man. That's crazy. She brought in 3 brand new names. Epstein's former assistant, Sarah, says that these three men were also involved in everything Epstein had going on, guys. So here they go.
Patrick Fekkai, a French celebrity hairstylist whose representatives deny that he's done anything wrong. Philip Levine, the former mayor of Miami Beach and cruise industry entrepreneur. And Patrick Demarchelier, a French fashion photographer. CNN reached out to Levine and to representatives for Demarchelier, who died in 2022, but we have yet to hear back. Sources also told CNN that Kellen accused Fekkai and Levine of sexually assaulting her and testified that Demarchelier exposed himself to her. We should note none of the men have been charged with any crime in connection with Epstein. Joining us to discuss is Democratic Congressman James Walkinshaw of Virginia.
That's crazy,
the
guys.
House Oversight Committee, and you were in this closed session. You can confirm that she named these 3 individuals?
That's correct.
And what is so what? Like, is the committee now going to call the 2 of the 3 that were named who are still alive?
Well, look, I think this is the purpose of our investigation, is to try to suss out who else might have been involved in Epstein and Maxwell's crimes. And the transcribed interview with Ms. Kellen produced several names. And look, our role in Congress isn't to prosecute anybody, but my hope has been that our investigation will lead the Department of Justice, either this one or a future Department of Justice, to reopen this investigation that we know fell short in so many ways and pursue all of these allegations that are credible.
Is the committee going to call other Epstein survivors? Because it seems like these 3 names they're not new for the people who have been following the Epstein travails over the years, but there are much bigger, wealthier people that have been named that likely other survivors would be able to name if they also testified for the committee.
Well, many of the survivors have shared their stories publicly to the extent that they're comfortable sharing. We know some of those key figures like Les Wexner were never even interviewed by the FBI. I don't think we want to find ourselves forcing survivors or victims.
Oh, I don't mean forcing, but if any of them want to name names.
Absolutely. Well, certainly, yeah. Anyone who wants to share more information should come to us at the Oversight Committee. We've said we'll provide a forum, private or public, for anyone who wants to do that. Absolutely.
Kellen described in graphic detail some of the sexual abuse that she says she endured by Epstein himself. She also blamed Ghislaine Maxwell for some of his wrongdoing, saying, quote, Maxwell turned Epstein into the monster he became. Is the committee going to continue trying to seek information from Ghislaine Maxwell?
Absolutely. And I think Ms. Kellen's testimony yesterday highlights why this concept that Trump continues to float or consider that Ghislaine Maxwell
that's sour right there, guys.
So flat out wrong. Maxwell was at the center of this. She was as abusive in many ways as Epstein was, as Ms. Kellen and others have shared with us. She shouldn't have been moved to.
And she's documented as being with Ghislaine and Jeffrey, guys. She most definitely was there for it all. She says she's seen people abused, and she also has been abused herself at the hands of Epstein.
Cushier prison situation.
A lower
pardon. Yeah, shouldn't be on the table. It should be ruled out. But clearly, there's some information she has that Donald Trump wants to make sure it doesn't get out to the public.
Have you found out why she was given this nicer prison to go to, this lower security prison? Like, I mean, it's really odd, right? Because she talked to now acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, said that President Trump had nothing to do with anything, and then all of a sudden was transferred to a nicer prison.
Well, that's exactly why we're going to be questioning Pam Bondi on the 29th of this month. She's going to be asked detailed questions about that, what conversations took place with the president or anyone at the White House with Todd Blanche about that conversation, that meeting that he had with Ghislaine Maxwell. He's refused to give straight answers about that. He claims she wasn't moved to a less secure prison situation. That's in contradiction to the facts and what even folks in those prisons have told us. So we're going to ask Pam Bondi tough questions about that.
Last question for you.
Let him speak on Pam Bondi, guys.
Of making as much of the Epstein files public, Thomas Massie, Congressman of Kentucky, was defeated in his re-election bid, targeted by President Trump. Yes. I've seen floated by Massie allies the idea that he should just go to the floor of the House and name names and read files that we in the public don't have access to. For those who don't know, members of Congress cannot be sued for libel for things that they read on the floor of the House. There's this protection for it. Do you want him to do that?
I want him to reveal any information that he has. Absolutely. He's done some of that already. He may feel even more free to do more of that. And I think you'll see him over the next 6 months before the end of his term continue the, in my view, courageous fight he's taken on behalf of these survivors to get accountability and transparency.
Do you think he was targeted because of his role in getting the Epstein files?
I think that was a big part of it. Yeah, I think the tens of millions of dollars spent against him by Trump and the MAGA machine, part of the Epstein cover-up, no question.
Democratic Congressman James Walker of the great Commonwealth of Virginia. Thanks for being here. Also on our Law and Justice lead, the British investigation into Andrew.
It's most definitely crazy when they start calling it a cover-up, guys.
Mountbatten Windsor, you might know him as the Prince, formerly known as Andrew, or the Andrew formerly known as Prince, I guess, may be expanding. Today, police urge the public to come forward with information as they may examine allegations of sexual misconduct. This is all part of a broader investigation to accusations that the then Prince shared confidential information with now dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein when he was Britain's trade envoy. Andrew vehemently denies any and all wrongdoing in his dealings with Epstein and any personal gain from his role as a British trade envoy. Let's bring in CNN Royal correspondent Max Foster. Max, what pushed investigators to make this public plea?
Well, it's interesting. So a general misconduct inquiry into his role at the time when he was a trade envoy in this country. So we were under the impression that was just in relation to potentially swapping files with Epstein, state secrets. But the police are making clear they have also been looking at it as broad misconduct, including sexual misconduct, particularly in relation to a woman who claimed that she was taken to a dress here in Windsor in 2010 for sexual purposes. They have reached out to her lawyers. She's not currently cooperating with them, but as I understand it, there may be some sort of negotiation going on there. I think the purpose for this briefing, though, was to call for witnesses. There's a real determination amongst the police here to investigate properly, but they need witnesses to come forward and give them the evidence. So that's really what today was about. But it is obviously, to the public's knowledge, at least at this point, a second case, because a previous case of Virginia Giuffre, who sadly died by suicide, obviously isn't involved in this case, but she made much more serious allegations about Andrew. That was settled out of court without Andrew accepting any culpability. But it does broaden this, and it does show, I think, that in this country, the police forces are doing all they can with not enough witnesses, whereas in the United States, there seem to be lots of survivors and witnesses willing to give evidence and not the same level of investigation. So two juxtaposing positions on either side of the Atlantic.
All right, hold on. All right, let's take that out here. All right, so it's most definitely being reported that basically, Epstein's assistant has made waves with the releasing of these new names in the Epstein files. Check this out.
Kellen and her testifying yesterday shows what's wrong with this situation. We were told there was nothing else to know. We were told that there was nobody else. That's it. There's no list. There's no anything like that. I don't even know what you're asking me. That's what we get from Todd Blanche. Great straight face. Great poker face. Really skilled. But BS. You didn't know about her. You didn't know she existed. Now, if you think that she's completely unbelievable, well, why didn't you tell the members of Congress that already? So if these names she gives are accurate, it could also still be accurate that she was somebody who did bad things also, right? Both could be true. But why are we only hearing this now? And why were we told there wasn't anything to hear? And now what do we make of these names? Let's go to that piece, okay? She says she was sexually assaulted by the former Miami Beach mayor. He also ran for governor. A very wealthy guy.
Told y'all. She says she's seen people, touched, and she had also been through it herself at the hands of Epstein guys and his friends. These are the three new people right here. You know what I'm saying? Frederick, Philip, and Patrick. Philip
Levine. Okay. Celebrity hairstylist Frederick Fekkai, who Dusty says nobody's going to know. I even knew who he was. I've seen his shampoo and stuff like that. And late fashion photographer Patrick DeMarchier. Now, I get, maybe you know him, maybe you don't. He's got a lot of famous photography books, but he's also dead, all right? So he's kind of out of it. So you got Fekkai and Levine. They both deny her claims. But why are we only hearing about it now? That's my point, all right? So let's ask former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Aronberg, and Epstein survivor, Lisa Phillips. Both perspectives very important with where we are right now. So thank you both, especially on Friday before Memorial Day weekend, to make time. Thank you. Dave, one, you got to know Levine. Have you ever heard this before, and what do you make of the allegation?
Chris, many Floridians know Phil Levine. He was a strong contender for governor when DeSantis ultimately won. He lost in a Democratic primary to Andrew Gillum, and his name had been associated with Jeffrey Epstein in the past, but Levine said he only met Epstein a handful of times. He really was close with Ghislaine Maxwell. That was well documented. But it has been seen that the relationship between Levine and Epstein was apparently stronger than had been let on. But you're right to ask the question, why now? Why didn't anyone interview Sarah Kellen until now? You would think that if Comer's committee was serious about getting to the bottom of it, Kellen would have been one of the first to be interviewed. She was the gatekeeper. She was the person who arranged for the girls to come in, paid them.
They said she was the gatekeeper. Wow.
In some cases, there have been credible allegations that she took nude photographs of these underage girls, which could open her up to possible child pornography charges. And yet she was never charged because she was seen as not just an accomplice, but also as one of Epstein's victims.
Let me ask you one more thing, and then I want to go to Lisa about how much of this is surprising, not surprising. Am I wrong, and by the way, I want to be wrong, that for you to tell me as the acting attorney general or the attorney general or the head of the FBI or number 2 of the FBI or the president of the United States, I've got nothing else to tell you. There's nothing else for you to know. When you had to know that she exists and that these names were there to be had, so is it misfeasance or is it malfeasance? Or did they screw up, or did they want us to not know about this? What do you think, Dave?
The Department of Justice's decisions, their public statements, were being prompted by the White House.
Even they called it a cover up. Let's go.
And they wanted this story to be gone. Remember, it was supposed to be a Democratic conspiracy, then a Democratic hoax, and then there's nothing to see here. There's nothing else in the files. But the MAGA base agreed with most people that we needed to see this. Gotcha. We needed more transparency, and that's what led to the Epstein files.
Make sure you guys take a little second to double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, man. It helps out the channel, man. Most definitely hit that like button, guys. If you click the 3 dots, you hit the thumb up. That's another way to hit the like button if you haven't already hit it.
Transparency Act, which even though there's still 3 million pages still redacted, still kept away, it's been quite an eye-opener for a lot of people. And then you have Comer's committee, they've been subpoenaing people, but it started as a political job where they're subpoenaing Hillary Clinton. What does she have to do with this? Right. And they didn't even subpoena Alex Acosta, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. They let him come in later, and now they finally got Sarah Kellen. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, finally, but she's been there the whole time. So now, Lisa, you have said to me and hinted to me on TV and on text, Chris, it's only a mystery to you. We know these names. You can't put it on the survivors to put out the names because all the pain that comes with that shouldn't be on them. It should be on the government. Do you believe this was a step in the right direction, and is Kellen the right person to be taken as a survivor?
I don't know Sarah Kellen personally, so I can't really speak on her story and how much I do believe her. I can just draw on the fact that I have many survivor sisters who have alleged that she has participated in abuse with them. And they're pretty strong feelings against her. But there is also a well-known feeling amongst all of us survivors that Jeffrey Epstein was multifaceted and he loved young women to manipulate and abuse them. And to my understanding, Sarah Kellen was 21 when she met him. She was in her early 20s. And I don't believe that there's any way that he didn't abuse her and that she didn't start out at least as a victim, because that's Jeffrey's way of controlling.
Understood. And I understand that this is complicated and it can be layered. And that doesn't work for us in our political dialogue, context, nuance. We want it simple. And we want it obvious and ugly, unfortunately. Had you ever heard any of these names before? And what do you want next?
I've never heard of Phil Levine ever mentioned amongst all the names that I've known from my survivor sisters. Patrice DeMarchale, never heard it either. Frederick Fagai, though, I have been to his studio several times to get my hair done. That was an appointment made by Jeffrey's secretary. I was never abused by this man. I'm not surprised to hear this because he was in the network. He was a close friend of Jeffrey's. I do know that for a fact.
Okay. So it is good to know these names. I have no idea if what she alleges is true, Ms. Kellen. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what she offered as proof. I have no idea what they asked for her in terms of proof, but I know that it's out there and we have to be responsible with it. And there should be a lot more of this, and there's a lot more to know. Dave, thank you. Lisa, thank you. I keep telling you the same thing. I know everybody has quit on you. I know. Not us, not here, okay? We'll stay on it as long as there is something to stay on. Thank you for watching.
All right, so with these new names coming out, guys, and we heard from one of these survivors right there. Well, that most definitely provoked another one of the attorneys to come out and speak on the names that she named. Check this out.
We have new details this morning about the House Oversight Committee's interview of longtime Jeffrey Epstein assistant Sarah Kellen. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer says Kellen provided 3 new names of alleged abusers in Epstein's network. In 2007, federal prosecutors labeled her a potential Epstein co-conspirator, but Kellen told congressional investigators that
well, some people still hold on to the hope, my God, that something may happen. Something needs to happen, man. You know what I'm saying? People need to be held accountable for this sick stuff that's going on, man. Let's be for real. I hope they can get justice.
She is an abuse survivor herself. CNN's Annie Grayer is in Washington. Now, Annie, you spoke to Comer after that closed-door interview. Tell us, what did he say?
Yeah, Danny, this is some of the most candid that I've heard from Chairman Comer, and that he said Kellen provided them with really substantive information that's providing them with potential new leads to go down and new names of potential alleged abusers for them to look into. Now, this interview happened behind closed doors, and Comer is not revealing the names of the 3 individuals, but he says that his committee is going to be working to release this transcript of the closed door interview as quickly as possible. Take a listen to how he framed it all to us yesterday.
Of all the people that we've interviewed thus far, this was by far the most substantive and productive interview that we've had. She gave us 3 names of people that were involved in abuse. These were new names for us. So we'll be releasing the transcript as quickly as possible.
Can you share the names of those abusers now?
We'll get them as quickly as possible. And it's still going on, so I don't want to do that. But you'll find out very soon.
Now, Kellen is considered a controversial figure in Epstein's orbit because, as you mentioned, she was listed as a potential co-conspirator back in 2007. But in her closed-door interview yesterday, she laid out in great detail how she was actually a victim of Epstein's abuse. And we received her opening statement to see those specifics there. And she was asked a lot of questions about her experience as a victim of Epstein's abuse. She was also asked about her views on Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Epstein's co-conspirator, currently serving prison time. And she was asked what her views were on Maxwell and if Maxwell should be moved to a lower security prison. Kellen said no, according to a Democrat in the room. She was also asked if she believed that Maxwell should receive a presidential pardon. And Kellen also said that she didn't believe that either. Now, all of this gives the committee a lot of new information to look at, but at least one Democrat in the room, Raja Krishnamurthy, told reporters after that while Kellen was forthcoming in some areas, because she was in the room voluntarily, she didn't have to answer all of the committee's questions. And because she has so much potential information for the committee, they may consider wanting to call her back under subpoena. But a lot of information for the committee to go through before their next big interview with former Attorney General Pam Bondi next week.
Yeah, a lot indeed. Fascinating developments. Cindy Greer, thank you for that great reporting. Really do appreciate it.
Let me ask you about something else that happened today that I know is very important to you, and that is the testimony we heard to Sarah Kellen, Jeffrey Epstein's assistant for 15 years. She says she's one of Epstein's victims as well. Now, you were in a closed-door deposition with her today, so you heard the questions, you heard the answers. I know that, among other things, she shared with your committee 3 names that are new names, Congressman Khanna, that she says are tied to the abuse of young girls. What more can you tell us tonight?
Well, I believe her. These 3 men assaulted her. I don't want to say the specific names, but I will leave it as one is a business person, politician, and other 2 were celebrities. And it shows how broad this Epstein class is of men who either assaulted, abused, trafficked, with young girls and with women. And that's why we need justice. This was not just Epstein. This was not Maxwell acting alone. This was powerful men who abused women who are still out free and haven't faced justice.
Can I just ask you a question about these names? Were they, you're saying they were new, right? So presumably they're not names that we've seen mentioned in the files. Were you surprised or shocked when you heard their names?
They were not people familiar to me. They are a prominent politician and 2 celebrities. I'm sure eventually the names will come out. But the point is that these are prominent people who assaulted her. And she didn't want to say who assaulted some of the other girls. She felt that could implicate her, but we need to follow up with her under oath to see what she knew about the other men who were abusing the other girls.
All right. So on that point, let me ask you something, because obviously you're talking about the abuse she endured herself, which is horrific. She said she spent years being sexually and psychologically abused by Epstein. And she said in the statement we understand today, and I'll read from it, Congressman, I want this committee to know that the abuse happened on average on a weekly basis and was at times violent. It included an occasion in Palm Beach when he trapped me in the gym by lowering the metal hurricane shutter, blasted the music so loud no one could hear, choked me, and violently raped me.
Wow.
Now, Congressman, I've been watching some of the back and forth on your committee, and that there were questions on whether she was a victim or also an accomplice in her role as an assistant and what she was doing for Epstein vis-a-vis other girls. You were in the room, right? You saw her. You heard her testimony. You watched her body language. You heard her voice. How do you navigate that fine line?
I believe she's a victim. Look, this happened with a number of survivors where they were raped, they were abused, they were trafficked, and then at a young age, to save themselves, they may have assisted Epstein in recruiting other girls, or may have assisted Epstein just to prevent the abuse on them. I view all of those as victims of Epstein, and I view her as a victim who faced horrific rape and assault.
Police investigating the former Prince Andrew are renewing their call for anyone with him.
So I don't want to hear nothing about Andrew right now. Hold on. We stand on topic, guys. And that's with the former aide of Jeffrey Epstein basically releasing new names. Let's get a little bit deeper into this situation, guys.
She has just named names we apparently hadn't really spoken about before in connection with Epstein's alleged empire of abuse. And reportedly, we just found out who those people are. Raises a lot of questions. Was Kellen a vulnerable and helpless victim, or was she a willing participant in Epstein's alleged sex trafficking organization? The House Oversight Committee tried to get answers this week from her during a highly anticipated closed-door interview.
Of all the people that we've interviewed thus far, this was by far the most substantive and productive interview that we've had.
We are breaking down what we know about Sarah Kellen, her deep connections to Jeffrey Epstein, and more about those names. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Let's most definitely find out who she is,
sexual
guys.
and his Sarah Kellen. You've likely heard that name come up in connection with Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged criminal empire, which was reportedly devoted to satisfying his sexual desires. When you look at the government files connected to Epstein, it is essentially exposed Kellen as allegedly being one of Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand women, alongside, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell. So it is a big deal that she agreed to come forward and speak with the House Oversight Committee about her time in Epstein's inner circle. She appeared Thursday for a closed-door interview with committee members where she was questioned 4 hours by lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. Committee Chairman James Comer spoke with reporters before this interview got underway.
This is a witness that was a personal assistant to Mr. Epstein. She was also a victim of Mr.
Epstein's personal assistant and also a victim of Mr. Epstein. Talk about it.
Epstein. So we're bringing her in. We have a lot of questions about
crazy guys,
everything from the day-to-day activities to what she saw and what she knows, and hopefully it'll help us as we proceed in the investigation. It's going to be a tough interview. Of all the interviews we've done, this is going to be the toughest one. I'm here to listen and learn. Obviously, I can't imagine the scenario that she was in, and obviously we know enough about Epstein to know that he was a terrible person and he was abusing these women. Now, it appears to me the Department of Justice considered her, not necessarily a co-conspirator, but rather, I don't want to say whistleblower, but someone that aided in the prosecution of Epstein. So we've just got a lot.
She waited all this time and they ain't say nothing. They say she's trying to get out of her own trouble. She don't want to be looked at as a suspect. She want to be looked at as a victim. But if you seen people become victims and then why you didn't say nothing, that makes you like a part of it.
Questions about that. I know how the Department of Justice viewed her. I don't know how the Oversight Committee will view her.
Right.
We're obviously she's presumed innocent. She's going to have due process, and I appreciate her being here today. And we certainly look forward to her testimony. But again, it's going to be hard because, there's some that believe she was, 100% a victim or survivor, and then there's some that think she was a victim and victimizer. So it's just a terrible scenario. I've read her story. I've read her opening statement, and I know that.
Hey, Miss T.
This is going to be a tough one for us.
Now, Kellen has been described as Epstein and Maxwell's as basically an assistant, a staffer, with one source reportedly telling the New York Post in 2024 that Kellen, quote, had a front row seat to the debauchery. And Kellen's name is mentioned many times in the Epstein Files library on the DOJ website. And there are candid photos of her spending time around Maxwell and Epstein and powerful friends. Her name can be seen on passenger manifests for private jet flights, like this manifest, which shows her traveling with Epstein, French fashion model scout, and alleged sexual predator Jean-Luc Brunel. And
y'all think she may be just trying to wiggle her way out of her own charges, guys? With coming and telling this story, but also making herself a victim as well. She sat back and watched all this go on and didn't say anything while it was happening.
3 people just listed as female. So here's how a civil lawsuit, that was filed against Epstein, just how it described Sarah Kellen. This was filed more than a decade ago, but it described her as, quote, defendant Jeffrey Epstein's key lieutenant in the organization was defendant Sarah Kellen, who served as both his scheduler and a recruiter procurer of the girls. And despite those allegations, and despite being named in official investigations, Kellen has never faced any sort of criminal charges related to sex trafficking or abuse or exploitation or anything else. I'm going to talk about why. In fact, she was reportedly included in a Florida non-prosecution agreement that got Epstein off the hook for federal charges. Remember this? It was the alleged assault of young girls at his Palm Beach mansion. Again, I'll get more into that in a minute, but first, I just want you to read some of Kellen's own words that were written as part of an opening statement for her interview.
So this is what she had to say.
It was published in part by ABC News. We don't have the transcript yet. We don't have the video deposition yet or the video interview yet. When it comes out, maybe we'll do a follow-up on it. But I'm going to warn you, what she had to say is very, very difficult to listen to. So it says, quote, he groomed me, sexually and psychologically abused me, controlled me, manipulated me, dominated me, and gaslit me until I could no longer tell which thoughts were mine and which were his. According to the report from ABC, Kellen says that she was working at a hotel out in Hawaii when she was recruited by a coworker for a job with Jeffrey Epstein. And she says she had gotten married when she was just 17 years old. And that after getting a divorce, she was excommunicated from her church. So you're talking about a very difficult time in her life. Her statement, according to ABC, continues, I was 21 years old, far from where I grew up, stuck on an island in the middle of nowhere with no college degree, no family, no friends, no money, and nowhere to live. And she claims that that situation made her a perfect target for Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, after months of unpaid labor, he instructed me to draw him a bath on his island, then ordered me to undress and get in with him.
This is some of what she had to say during her deposition, guys. Remember, it was closed door, but they recorded it. So the recording should be dropping any time, guys. But she most definitely let the cat out the bag.
And he said, the job is yours. Now you just have to keep it. He then pulled me onto his bed and made clear what keeping the job required. Only after I submitted to his sexual abuse did the paychecks begin. She goes on to say, he knew everyone in the fashion industry, academics, finance, government, powerful world leaders, dictators, and everyone in between. From the beginning, he showed me that he was more powerful than basically anyone in the world. Jeffrey was able to fool and manipulate the brightest minds in the world. Us victims didn't stand a chance. And during a break in this interview, you had Representative Comer just express shock at some of the information that Kellen was revealing.
Let me say, Sarah Kellen has been very helpful. Of all the people that we've interviewed thus far, this was by far the most substantive and productive interview that we've had. She was very brave coming forward. I can't imagine how difficult it was for her to go into detail about the abuse that she endured at the hands of Epstein and Maxwell. One very positive thing today is she gave us 3 names of people that were involved in abuse. These were new names for us. So we'll be releasing the transcript as quickly as possible. I know there are some names of some victims that she also mentioned that we're gonna have to agree on redactions and things like that. But as far as the men that were abusers, alleged abusers, then we'll the whole world will see that and we'll be able to move forward.
And those 3 men have now reportedly been named. So sources have told News Nation they are, and again, these are allegations, hair mogul Frederick Fekkai, former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine, and fashion photographer Patrick Demarchelier. Now,
the 3 Stooges
died back in 2022. He was known for famous portraits of everyone from Princess Diana to Janet Jackson. He worked closely with fashion magazines like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. He was also an official royal photographer for the British royal family, which is interesting given former Prince Andrew's ties to Epstein.
He was also a sick predator who preyed on kids. Don't leave that part out.
Rampant allegations of sexual assault and abuse that have been leveled against him. When it comes to hairstylist Frederick Fekkai, Bloomberg actually published an article earlier this year
about who they are, guys,
covering his apparent connection to Epstein and the thousands of files that were released by the DOJ. And according to Bloomberg's reporting, Epstein had accounts at Fekkai's ritzy New York salons. Reporters combed through Epstein's credit card statements, and they found that he spent a crazy amount of money at Fekkai's businesses, paying for expensive hair and spa treatments for a lot of different people, including, the allegation is, former White House counsel Kathy Rumler. Fekkai often appears in Epstein's emails, has previously acknowledged flying on his private jet. And what about former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine? So the businessman became mayor in 2013. He ran for governor of Florida in 2018. In 2019, he apparently told the Miami Herald that, yeah, he knew Epstein through Ghislaine. Quote, we probably met probably 15, 20 years ago at a social event in New York and probably exchanged business cards. I really don't recall where and when, never had any interactions with him and didn't meet beyond that. Now, the Herald reports that emails between Levine and Maxwell were flirty and
just wild, man. It's some sick individuals in the world.
Sexually suggestive, and that it appears Levine's relationship with Epstein dated back to the early 2000s. I will tell you, News Nation reports they didn't receive a comment from Fekkai, Levine, or Kellen's lawyers at the time of publication, but there you go, something to think about. Now, I will tell you from a legal point of view, it is bold for Sarah Kellen to name names. And if the transcript comes out of her interview and those names aren't redacted, which under the law, they're not supposed to be, big accusations. Why? Because there has already been a lot of talk about how the victims should come forward and publicly call out their abusers, name names, shame them. Now, the difficulty with that is of potential repercussion. And there's also evidence, right? If they don't have corroborating evidence to support these claims of abuse, and there's nothing in the Epstein files to definitively back up these specific claims, that could be why maybe you don't have a number of people coming out and naming names, potentially opening themselves up to liability. Now, if they tell it to the lawmakers and the lawmakers reveal the names, that's kind of a different legal issue there. But for her to reportedly publicly mention these names like that, I mean, it does become a very interesting question as to her credibility. She didn't have to do this. Reports are true that this is who she named. Significant to say the least. So, what are the Epstein files, which include, previously sealed investigative reports, legal briefs, court records, all that, more? What do they reveal about Kellen's work with Epstein? Let's get into it. So Kellen would end up named as a defendant in multiple lawsuits connected to her boss. In 2008, an anonymous alleged victim sued Jeffrey Epstein and some of his compatriots for abuse. And a section of that lawsuit reads, quote, defendant Jeffrey Epstein, assisted by defendant Sarah Kellen, developed a plan, scheme, and criminal enterprise that included an elaborate system wherein the then minor plaintiff was brought to the defendant, Jeffrey Epstein's residence, by the defendant's employees, recruiters, and assistants, including defendant Sarah Kellen. When the assistants and employees left the then minor plaintiff and other minor girls alone in a room at the defendant's mansion, defendant Jeffrey Epstein himself would appear, remove his clothing, and direct the then minor plaintiff to remove her clothing. He would then perform one or more lewd, lascivious, and sexual acts. And I'll just tell you, the rest of it is just way too graphic to read on YouTube. But that section of the lawsuit ends by saying he would then pay the plaintiff for engaging in this sexual activity. Kind of gives you an idea about what a sex trafficking trial against Jeffrey Epstein would have looked like. Now, I will also tell you that Sarah Kellen is mentioned again and again in official FBI interviews as being the alleged person who got everything ready for Epstein's massage appointments, which instead of being with professional masseuses, were often instead allegedly being performed by teenage girls. For example, this is from an FBI report from April 2007, quote, Redacted was interviewed in West Palm Beach, Florida regarding a federal investigation involving the sexual exploitation of minors. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, Redacted provided the following information. A good friend told Redacted that she could make $200 for providing a massage. The only instruction she received from Redacted was to wear something sexy and to say that she was 18 if asked. Redacted remembered being told about providing massages to Redacted around senior skip day. Redacted and Redacted were Redacted's good friends and the girl she knew the most at that time. Redacted first met Redacted upon their Redacted and Redacted's arrival to the Epstein residence. Epstein was downstairs at the time. Epstein acknowledged Redacted by saying hi and asking how she was doing. Redacted took Redacted upstairs to provide Epstein the massage. Kellen removed the massage table from the closet and set it up. She also set out the lotions to be used during the massage. Epstein entered the room wearing a towel. He laid face down on the massage table. During the massage, Epstein asked Redacted to take her shirt off. He also commented that Redacted was beautiful. Epstein asked Redacted if she was 18. She told him that she was 18. And a transcript of testimony from detectives during these secret grand jury proceedings in Palm Beach County out in Florida the year before quotes an investigator saying she was taken to the house. She was introduced to Epstein's assistant by the name of Sarah. Sarah then would escort her upstairs, prepare the room for the massage by putting out the ointment and the different oils. Going back to official FBI reports, quote, during the FBI's investigation, some of the girls interviewed by PBPD were re-interviewed and additional girls were interviewed for the first time. During those interviews, the girls related that Redacted, Epstein's assistant, would contact the girls while Kellen and Epstein were still in New York or elsewhere in order to arrange massage times upon his arrival in Palm Beach. The FBI also has collected the flight manifests for Epstein's 2 private planes during the period of January 2004 through December 2005, as well as cell phone records for Redacted, Epstein, and some of the girls. The investigation revealed that prior to flights to Palm Beach, Kellen would contact some of the girls via cell phone. The massage pads show evidence that the girls responded to those telephone calls and left messages confirming their appointments. Now, an extensive probable cause affidavit that was filed by Palm Beach police made note of Kellen's apparent attempts to keep girls coming back for more, quote, work. So it says, Redacted said when Epstein announces to his assistant Sarah that he's traveling to Palm Beach, Sarah would then contact Redacted to arrange girls to work for Epstein. Redacted stated that once her parents discovered that she was visiting Epstein, they disapproved of the encounters with him and she stopped. Redacted further stated that Sarah still tries to call Redacted's house and leaves messages. And as investigations ramped up in this case, it is alleged that Sarah Kellen made attempts to contact these girls and find out what they knew about police inquiries. This is from the same Palm Beach police probable cause affidavit. Quote, at the conclusion of the interview, the tape was stopped. I was informed that Sarah had attempted to reach Redacted via cell phone. A voicemail message on October 4th, 2005 at 10:59 a.m. revealed a female voice who identified herself as Sarah, who requested Redacted to call her back in reference to the police questioning. Redacted provided the incoming telephone number. Redacted stated she inadvertently told Redacted about the police investigation.
Spilling all the beans, guys. Make sure you're taking time to double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button, guys. We need to get the likes over 100. Double tap that screen if you have not on your mobile device, or click the 3 dots and hit that thumbs up, guys.
Because Redacted had called her to tell her about how she just received a rental car from Jeffrey Epstein. Redacted had called her to tell her that she was given a rental car, a 2005 silver Nissan Sentra, to utilize to visit family and visit Epstein. Redacted asked her what was going on at the house that the police would be asking questions. Redacted stated Redacted then called Jeff and Sarah and asked what was going on in reference to the ongoing police investigation. According to Redacted, Sarah has since then been trying to contact her to ask about the police questions. I instructed Redacted not to contact Sarah and do not provide any more information to Redacted, as she would notify Jeff Epstein and Sarah what was transpiring. And it wasn't just witness accounts that police were using as part of their investigations. No, they were also...
What are y'all thinking so far about old Sarah? Let me know. What are your opinions in the chat? Let me know in the chat. How do y'all feel about Sarah and her role with Epstein?
Keeping an eye on Kellen herself. What do I mean? So as part of the government's case against Ghislaine Maxwell, the Attorney General's office requested what are called silent hits, which according to the ACLU are ways to kind of flag someone's travel, basically an indication that someone's on a watch list. And part of email communications within the prosecutor's office says this in reference to Ghislaine Maxwell, quote, yup, she's currently in the U.S. I have her travel and Redacted's already saved from 2000 to current. I'll put the silent hit on Kellen and send out an update when it's confirmed. So essentially, they're keeping tabs on her. They're tracking her in a way. Now, investigators also took a close look at Kellen's cell phone records. There was a report that was included in the Epstein files release and states, quote, I began an analysis of Redacted's cellular telephone. The telephone number is assigned to Sarah Kellen, and the financially responsible party is Jeffrey Epstein of Redacted in New York City, New York. The time frame which was subpoenaed was September 2005 through October 2005. There were 87 pages of calls made either to the cell phone or from the cell phone. The local 561 numbers were analyzed. The spreadsheet was prepared and placed into the attachment file of who was called. The unknown numbers were researched using phonefinder.com, and subpoenas were requested to determine subscriber information. This was done to identify additional victims or witnesses. The analysis revealed that Kellen had called the victim witnesses frequently when Epstein was in the town of Palm Beach to, quote, work. This confirms what the girls interviewed had previously stated. Redacted would notify them when Epstein was in town and their willingness to work. The CD was placed into evidence. And I just want to emphasize that this is reportedly 1 month worth of calls to or from Kellen's cell. So you're talking 87 pages. That is a lot of calls. And based on multiple investigations, Kellen was the alleged point person when it came to lining up girls for Epstein. Quote, in response to concerns raised regarding charging counts related to those girls whose credibility has been attacked by attorneys for Epstein, I asked the case agents to work on corroborating the statements of those girls. This addendum reports on those efforts related to Jane Doe 6 redacted. Jane Doe number 6 is the girl who saw Epstein most frequently, and there were more than 250 telephone calls between Jane Doe number 6 and Sarah Kellen. Jane Doe number 6 is one of the girls who reports the most sexual activity with Epstein, including oral sex, sexual activity with redacted, and forced sexual intercourse with Epstein.
Wow.
And I got to call this out too, because in addition to allegations that she was the scheduler and the procurer of teen victims, it is also alleged that Sarah Kellen took nude photos at Epstein's behest. There is another report that reads, quote, on one occasion, when Jane Doe was approximately 16 years old, Epstein's assistant, redacted, telephoned Jane Doe and told her that Epstein wanted Kellen to photograph her. Jane Doe traveled to Epstein's Palm Beach home where Kellen took a series of nude photographs of Jane Doe posing at several locations on Epstein's property. Jane Doe was paid $500 for posing nude for the photographs. Jane Doe reported that Kellen used a digital camera to take the nude photographs. So there seems to have been a lot of accusations, both from witness accounts and on paper, that Sarah Kellen was allegedly intimately involved in the day-to-day operations in Epstein's households. So the question now is, why has she never faced any sort of criminal prosecution? Fair question, right? Well, I will tell you that prosecutorial decision-making was never really made clear in the files. However, this could be a complicating factor. I mean, according to ABC News, the DOJ records show that the government didn't argue against the idea that Sarah Kellen, quote, was herself a victim of abuse by Epstein, and highlighted how her narrative was in line with other alleged victims who worked for Epstein. We also have the complication of the non-prosecution agreement, the NPA that Epstein entered into as part of a so-called sweetheart deal back in 2008, 2007. That's when he agreed to plead guilty to state charges, right? Solicitation of prostitution, solicitation of a minor, and the extraordinary steps that were taken to keep details of that NPA a secret. I mean, according to ABC News, in an email that recently became public, an attorney for Epstein said to a prosecutor on the case, quote, please do whatever you can to keep this from becoming public. And this agreement basically shields Epstein and 4 co-conspirators, or alleged co-conspirators, females who work closely with him, from being prosecuted federally. It reads in part, in consideration of Epstein's agreement to plead guilty and to provide compensation in the manner described above, if Epstein successfully fulfills all of the terms and conditions of this agreement, the United States also agrees that it will not institute any criminal charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including, but not limited to, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, or redacted. The redacted name there, probably Ghislaine Maxwell. She's been fighting the federal government for years to get her sex trafficking convictions overturned. Her attorneys say this NPA protected her from prosecution, and I will tell you, it hasn't been a winning argument. So far, appeals have not been successful, and she's still serving a 20-year prison sentence. Now, I will tell you this, okay? When it comes to the NPA, Kellen seems to say now she had no idea it was even a thing. ABC News reports that in her opening statement for this interview on Capitol Hill, she said, quote, no one from law enforcement ever spoke with me, ever heard my side, ever asked me a single question. I did not even know my name was in that agreement until after it had been signed and released to the public. The federal government of the United States branded me a criminal in a secret deal with my own abuser without ever once speaking to me.
Wow, guys. So basically, she said she didn't know nothing about her name being in that agreement that Jeffrey signed. Basically, it was done without her knowledge. Do y'all believe that? Yeah, he was most definitely trying to keep her out the limelight by, having them. That she was never questioned by the police. That's crazy, guys.
Now, other court filings and communications that were released over the last months, they lay out discussions among federal investigators after Epstein's death as they tried to decide whether Kellen could face or should face any charges. And included in those discussions were emails with Kellen's attorneys, who of course recommended against prosecution, citing Kellen's own experiences as a victim of Epstein. And just to reiterate, ABC News reports that the decision was made not to charge her, but the exact reasoning hasn't been made clear. I just got to talk for a moment about one more thing, about another connection between Sarah Kellen and Jeffrey Epstein. And that is her now ex-husband.
Let's go, So Blessed. Thank you for that 10. She says, please double tap that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button on your mobile device, or click the 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. Remember, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to vote on the poll in the chat, guys.
NASCAR champion Brian Vickers. So it appears that Vickers and Epstein were friends for years. Maybe that's a strong term. I don't know. Associates. I don't know. Look, here's the way to look at it. So Vickers' name and email address showing up in the Epstein files along financial questions and inquiries about NASCAR sponsorships and dirty jokes. That's what's come up. In fact, Vickers was still in contact with Jeffrey Epstein just months before his arrest. You have this February 2019 email that has the subject line, "Thought you would like this,"
Thank you,
emoji, and "Happy Valentine's, buddy." And then there's a winking face, a movie attachment. What exactly that attachment is unclear. Go back to 2012. There's an email believed to be from Sarah Kellen to Epstein that reads, "Redacted and Porter are in town for Porter's B-Day. Having a B-Day party tonight. Had brunch with them, earlier with them, and Brian Vickers. Brian is trying to put the moves on. Any thoughts?" And a few days later, Kellen says in an email with a female friend, "NASCAR guy I like, but he has a reputation of being a major playboy. We've been texting a bit the last few days. He's going to a wedding in St. Thomas next week, and I will also be on the island the same time, so maybe I'll see him there. Going to invite him to the island for lunch. We'll see. Not going to get my hopes up, but it's been fun to flirt and help get my mind off of other things."
Flirt.
And then a few months after that, Sarah Kellen emails a coworker saying, "Anywho, I'm boarded on my flight to Cali now. Yes, meeting up with Brian. He's racing in NASCAR in Sonoma on Sunday. I'll be meeting the parents and all his NASCAR friends this weekend. Yikes." So Vickers and Kellen, they got married in 2015. He retired from racing, apparently citing health issues. And 10 years later in 2025, they announced they were getting a divorce. And something else interesting that was spotted in the files that was apparently flagged by investigators working on the Maxwell case. This is a copy of a message that was reportedly sent by Vickers via GoFundMe. It's unclear who Vickers was exactly communicating with, but based on the information in the email, it seems he was responding to someone who had directly messaged him, thanking him for a donation. And as part of the long message, Vickers seemingly wrote this, quote, "We do not know each other, but having been a survivor of multiple major near-death health issues myself, plus having a wife that was completely abandoned by her family over a cult at a young age, then sexually abused, trafficked, and forcibly raped by 3 different men for 20 years straight, starting as a child at 13, I was specifically moved by your own story of abuse and recent life health challenges. I will never be able to imagine what you and my wife have suffered, but watching my wife in therapy for many years and cry herself to sleep on and off for 8 years, I can only imagine." And that message appears to have been forwarded to the FBI in 2020. It's unclear when the original note was sent, but obviously you can see why it's significant, right? We, of course, don't know how much Vickers knew about his wife's work with Epstein. Maybe she revealed things to him that changed his opinion on the financier. We just can't say for sure. Just to close this out, Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer said that the transcript or transcripts of Sarah Kellen's interview would be released as soon as possible. It is maybe also possible that we could see a video version of the deposition released as well, although her claiming to be a victim, maybe not. And we'll just keep an eye out and see what happens. Maybe we'll do a follow-up sidebar episode. And like other important depositions that are set to come as well include one with former Attorney General Pam Bondi, because after
Pam Bondi, guys. Yeah, we got her up next.
She was removed as AG. Bondi had said she wouldn't be appearing for a deposition, but when lawmakers threatened her with contempt, there was a new deposition date set for May 29th. That's according to The Guardian. That's all we have.
All right, so as he said, man, so that was everything we found out about the assistant of Epstein, basically giving out those names, guys, those 3 new names in the Epstein files, right? All right, so I've been telling y'all that today, Pam Bondi was scheduled to give a deposition, to the House committee, You know, she was supposed to go testify in front of them, which she did go down there. But the testifying part, I'm not so sure about. Man, we got the victims, we got the attorneys of Epstein's survivors, and the survivors themselves, as well as some congressmen, you know, who spoke on what it was that Pam Bundy did today, you know, during her testimony, or lack thereof. But I wanted to point this out as well. All right, so we all knew this was coming up with her basically being, you know, summoned to testify in front of them. Well, she has gave some breaking news of her own, Miss Pam Bundy, and right before she had to go up there, she basically let the world know that, hold on, let me find where it said, let me make sure I got it before I start talking. All right, yeah, to let the world know and everybody know that basically she's fighting cancer right now, guys. Yeah, Pam Bundy comes out and says that she's battling thyroid cancer before we get into what she had to say today.
General Pam Bondi is revealing she was diagnosed with thyroid cancer after leaving the Justice Department back in April. Bondi says she is undergoing treatment, including having surgery a few weeks ago. She says she is still recovering and doing well. Bondi is scheduled to testify Friday in the House Oversight Committee's Jeffrey Epstein probe. President Trump is convening his cabinet to talk about election wins here at home as efforts for a peace deal with
Don't
Iran
even worry
remain
about what it's saying
stagnant.
right
Here's a
now.
live
I just
look
wanted
at
to
the meeting with
highlight
his top
Bundy's
advisors, which comes as Iran
cancer
accuses the
battle,
U.S.
guys. Hold
of a,
on, let me
quote,
stop
grave
this.
violation.
Yeah. So once again, Pam Bundy
Pam Bondi is revealing she
battling
was
cancer.
diagnosed with thyroid cancer after leaving the Justice Department back in April. Bondi says she is undergoing treatment, including having surgery a few weeks ago. She says she is still recovering and doing well. Bondi is scheduled to testify Friday in the House Oversight Committee's Jeffrey Epstein probe. President Trump is convening.
All right. So yeah, that was the official report of her basically, you know, coming out and telling the world she's battling thyroid cancer, guys. So Pam Bundy has other situations going on outside of this Epstein stuff, right? But let's keep on track. Hold on. As we see basically what it was, what was her testimony or lack thereof. This is what some of the House committee had to say about what Pam Bundy pulled today, guys. Notice I said pulled today. Check this out.
And then I'm going to have a few folks are also going to give some remarks, and then I'll answer any questions. We are on a break right now from the interview, and so I want to make sure that we answer some questions. Let me just start by sharing with the American public where we're actually right now in this transcribed interview. To repeat what we continue to say, it is a shame and a disservice to the American people that this interview is not being recorded, videotaped, and then released to the American public, and that she was not brought in under oath. We continue to say that this should be recorded by video and released to the American public. And we're also asking that Chairman Comer immediately
Hey, Ms. Pooh
that right now are being done throughout today. I want to also say just a few other things. It is clear in just this part of the interview that she continues to push all of the investigation and the blame on acting AG Todd Blanche. She said, and I quote, "Acting AG Blanche was managing the entire investigation," end quote.
So she said that DOJ leader was basically, she pushed everything out on him. You know what I'm saying? I ain't got nothing to do with me. You know, basically he's the one running the show. he been handling it the whole time. Yeah, so basically I know she got a new position. So therefore she's basically telling them, man, I turned everything I had over to him. Plus he's been working on it the whole time.
And what you're going to hear in that interview, and what she's saying here in her words and remarks, is that it was Todd Blanche, the current acting AG, that was leading the Epstein investigation. And quite frankly, all of the mistakes that we saw, the redactions, not protecting survivors. She continues to push that back onto the acting AG, Todd Blanche, who, by the way, was Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. I also personally asked the former AG 5 times and 5 different questions about her conversations with President Trump, whether he directed her at any given time on the Epstein files, what he knew, what he asked her to redact or not, and she refused to answer any questions about President Trump. In fact, she said that she would not speak or respond to any questions that had anything to do with President Trump.
Yeah, said that she is not answering anything that got anything to do with Trump. Why, guys? Why? Is it a cover-up? This is their reaction from what it is that Pam Bundy pulled today, basically by not answering a lot of their questions, guys. And it was not made public.
It's also interesting that sitting next to her is DOJ counsel, somebody that currently works for the Department of Justice, who on multiple occasions stepped in and told the former Attorney General that she was not going to answer those questions, and especially when we asked questions of what the president directed her to do. And so the DOJ is in there right now stopping questions about President Trump and about what happened in the release of these files and why so many survivors were doxxed and their information, of course, released to the public. And let me also just say, finally, before I turn this over to Liz Stein here, we asked questions about Ghislaine Maxwell and the transfer. And again, she referred those questions to Todd Blanche in the Bureau of Prisons. So let's be clear, we have many questions for Mr. Blanche and for the Bureau of Prisons that yet Republicans are refusing to ask. Why was she transferred to a less secure facility? And Ms. Bondi claims to have no knowledge of the actual transfer, no knowledge that it was a less secure prison, and didn't know about it until she found out after the fact, and then will refuse to answer additional questions. So let me introduce Ms. Stein, of course, who a brave survivor with some remarks.
Thank you. My name is Liz Stein. In 1994, I was 21 years old and a senior in college when I met Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein.
This is one of the survivors, guys, basically gonna tell her story, you know, as everybody is in disbelief about the actions of Pam Bundy, including the survivors, guys.
For years, the Epstein case has been treated like entertainment in this country, a spectacle, a conspiracy theory, an endless cycle of headlines and social media focused on sensationalism and powerful people. Republicans versus Democrats, conspiracy versus cover-up, left versus right. That framing is wrong. What has gotten lost in all of this is the reality of what this is, the crime of sex trafficking. More than 1,000 vulnerable girls and young women were identified, groomed, trafficked, and abused in a system Jeffrey Epstein built around power, coercion, exploitation, and access to wealth and influence. And I think many Americans still do not fully understand what that means. Because if they did, they would never accept the way that this case is being handled.
Pam Bundy say you can ask me what you want, but I'm not speaking on Trump.
The partial release of the Epstein files, riddled with redactions that expose identifying information about survivors while protecting perpetrators, is not just bureaucratic incompetence. It reflects something much deeper about whose dignity our Department of Justice is prioritizing and whose suffering it is willing to sacrifice. And survivors see that clearly. For survivors, privacy is safety. Privacy is dignity. Privacy is the ability to rebuild a life without being re-traumatized by the very institutions that are supposed to protect us. And while survivors' identifying information was exposed, the Department of Justice is simultaneously telling the American people that there are no additional investigative leads worth pursuing. We can see with our own eyes when we look at the Epstein files that this is not true. These files contain leads, names, connections, friendships, patterns, witnesses, travel records, financial relationships, and institutional failures. In any other sex trafficking case of this magnitude, those leads would be aggressively pursued. But in this case, they have not been. And as citizens of this country, we should all be asking why. That is why people are losing trust in our Department of Justice. Not because this case is politically inconvenient, but because Americans understand instinctively that justice should not operate differently for wealthy people who have power. And that is also why many of us have serious concerns about today's proceedings. This should not be a transcribed interview. Former attorney Pam Bondi should testify under oath on video with a full transcript and recording released publicly, because the American people deserve transparency and accountability.
She says, man, this shouldn't have been a closed door thing. This should have been open to everybody in the public. It should have been video recorded and transcripts and all of that put out to the public. This is a public issue.
Not only exist when it's politically convenient. For survivors, this has never been about politics. It's about whether we, as victims of this crime, matter when the cameras are off. It's about whether the United States Department of Justice is willing to fully confront a massive sex trafficking operation when wealthy and powerful people are implicated.
Nope, not Pam.
That should concern every American. Because if the law only applies selectively, it is liberty for some, but not justice at all. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Melanie Stanford.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I represent New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. And I want to be clear today that one thing is clear, that this is absolutely a cover-up and a smokescreen to prevent Pam Bondi from having to testify under oath pursuant to a congressional subpoena. Now, let me explain a few things about what we have seen in the room. First and foremost, if Pam Bondi was complying with a congressional deposition to testify under oath, Department of Justice attorneys would not be intervening and essentially trying to stop her from answering basic questions about her conversations with Donald Trump, with the administration, and trying to claim that she does not have to answer questions. In fact, as the ranking member said, she has been asked multiple times about the Trump administration, about her conversations with the president, about her conversations with other administration officials. And when asked specifically about a conversation with Donald Trump, one of the Department of Justice attorneys intervened and said that she did not have to answer the question because it was a voluntary interview, and said, in fact, quote, "We don't even have to assert privilege because of that," and said, quote, "We refuse to provide answers." That means that the United States Department of Justice is intervening on behalf of Pam Bondi to stop her from answering questions about what happened in the cover-up of this case and her conversations with Donald Trump, and is asserting that she does not have to answer questions because she is not required to, because she is not being deposed under oath. This is a cover-up. This will be remembered as the largest cover-up likely.
She refused to answer certain questions and told him, hey, man, I'm not under oath. Wow. Man, Pam Bondi was in there acting up. No wonder they didn't make it public.
In American history, and it is
refusing to answer questions and all.
This interview is a smokescreen to try to show the American people that they are complying while they are not. Now, I also want to point out that there is not a single Republican in the room besides the chairman. For a supposed group of
The Republicans did not show up today, guys.
individuals who care deeply about justice for the survivors, not a single Republican could be bothered to travel across the country today to come hear testimony from the former Attorney General.
Wow.
They're not here. And they won't allow this interview to be put on video for the American people to see. And that means that only those of us who are allowed in the room can tell you what is actually happening. And what I can tell you is that when we started to ask difficult questions, Ms. Bondi got combative. The DOJ attorneys began rolling their eyes. They started intervening, and they tried to shut down any questions about the president and this administration's handling of the files. Now, I just want to end by saying this could all end now. The administration could end this by releasing the 3 million files they still have. In fact, Pam Bondi confirmed that they had 6 million files in their possession and have only released 3 million. She said that today. They could end this now by investigating crimes of known perpetrators that we have seen in the files.
Well, that went a lie right there. Did y'all catch it? Now, they said there was nothing more to see. There would be no more files. All the files were out. But she just said that Pam Bondi admitted to today having the other half of those files. So therefore, it was 6 million total. Only 3 million got put out. There's 3 million more files that Pam Bondi planned not to even put out, guys. She said it was over, remember? After they released the last little batch, they said, okay, it's the end. There's nothing else to see. Here you go. But there's still another 3 million just sitting around somewhere.
End this now.
I wonder what's in them.
By turning the Epstein files into Epstein trials, and they could end this now by actually speaking with survivors. And Pam Bondi herself said today that she had never spoken to a single survivor. She said that multiple times in the room today. So it's time to end the cover-up. Now, I turn it now to Mr. Maxwell Frost of Florida's 10th.
Thank you. I'll be really quick. Every single one of our questions got one of 3 responses. 1, not to my recollection, or I don't know. Number 2, talk with Todd Blanche. I don't know anything about it. And number 3, I am not talking about Donald Trump. Those are the 3 answers we're getting to every single question that we ask. This actually really reminds me of our deposition with Alex Acosta, where he obviously didn't know anything about anything going on in his own damn office. It's the same thing with Pam Bondi. Either she doesn't know or Todd Blanche was running the entire operation. So, okay, we're going to want to talk with Todd Blanche. And we're hoping that not just Chairman
Tom Blanche. Now, Pam Bondi shifted the blame to Tom Blanche, and now he's going to be subpoenaed to come testify. Because she said, hey, it's out of my hands. You know, he worked hand with me. He the one that got everything that y'all looking for. Y'all need to go talk to Tom Blanche. Now, Tom Blanche is going to be called in.
But every single Republican on this
or Todd Blanche, whatever his name is.
To him because we need to speak with him because obviously the former Attorney General is in that room placing every single thing on the current acting Attorney General of the United States. And the fact that you won't answer any questions relating to Donald Trump is disgusting and shows just how much of a cover-up this is. First, it started off with her saying, I'm not going to talk about any private conversations I've had with the president. Okay. Then we asked questions about the president generally. And she says, I'm not answering any questions having to do with the president at all. Anytime we ask for any information relating to this administration, somebody from the Department of Justice sitting right next to her puts their hand over the mic and tells her, do not answer that question. It's disgusting. It's a cover-up in broad daylight. And what they're hoping will happen is we'll walk out of here and we'll stop, but we're not going to stop. We are committed to this. We're not going to let this story die. We're not going to allow the survivors to just go off, right? And people forget about this. We're going to keep fighting for justice. We're going to talk with Todd Blanche. We're going to talk with people, and we're going to get the answers here. We're not going to let this story die. It's a disgrace what Pam Bondi's doing in that room. It's the same thing she did months ago when she came to try to evade the subpoena by coming in and speaking to us, not under oath, but we're going to keep this fight up.
I got it. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Summer Lee representing Pennsylvania's 12th congressional district. And listen, my colleagues have really laid it out. But what we've been seeing has been a consistent theme, not just since last August, when our ranking member Garcia and I were able to help to secure the initial subpoena to actually bring in the DOJ to release all of the files to our committee. But it has been an ongoing theme here. What we just witnessed from Pam Bondi, what she demonstrated was the fact that they believe and that they are an unaccountable DOJ, that's running cover for and protecting an unaccountable president and administration. But the real problem is that while we might expect Donald Trump to move in this way, someone who has himself been named in these files, we shouldn't expect that Chairman Comer, that our Congress, that Republicans here, sorry to make it political, but those folks who do have the power to actually use what influence, what tools we have with the United States Congress to actually bring about some justice right now, and to allow her to continually evade justice, to evade questions as we've seen today, it's a continuation of the indignity that they've inflicted upon our survivors, the indignity they've inflicted upon the American population, who have continuously had to watch an unaccountable justice system, a two-tier justice system in our country, and people all over the world who are looking to see if the United States will get their shit together. And the reality is that they are refusing to do that. Every step of this last year that we've gone through this process, which is, as we know, simply a renewed process here, because survivors have been fighting for justice for decades now. But since the Congress has taken up this particular fight in the ways that we've been able to by being able to press for subpoenas, we've seen over and over and over an unwillingness of power to be accountable to people, an unwillingness of our Congress to be a co-equal branch of government with the presidency, with the executive branch, and surely an unwillingness for us to actually demonstrate that we are willing to put women, children, and survivors first. So right now, what we want to do and what we're committed to doing is continuing to keep the main story, that justice doesn't have a time limit. And no matter how much Comer or Bondi or Blanche or Trump or whoever else fights back against the truth coming out, that this fight will continue, that we will not relent until every single person who has been impacted, not just by Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, but everyone who's being covered up or hidden, and the fouls or in people's personal knowledge that they won't share truthfully with us, and whether they're unofficial transcripts or real depositions on the record. That it's important that they recognize that not only will the oversight Dems, but also the American people will not back down. The survivors have not and will not back down. And it's important that we continue to keep this pressure on them and remind them that legally binding subpoenas must be answered. So right now, Pam Bondi is in non-compliance with 2 for herself. And we have to keep putting our pressure on them. And we'll continue to do that.
They say they applying pressure on Bundy, guys. If you have not double tapped that screen, hit that like button. That's how you like the channel, by double tapping the screen if you're on a mobile device, or click the 3 dots in the right hand corner. Hit that thumbs up, guys. So Pam Bundy went in there playing hardball. She played hardball with him the last time too, but this time she was a little more hardball with it, refusing to answer certain questions, saying she ain't talking about Trump no matter what they ask, and saying things like "I don't recall" or "I do not know," or placing the blame on Blanche, guys, the new DOJ, saying, "Hey man, it's all in his hand now. Y'all need to be talking to him. He been over this the whole time." What do y'all think about Bundy, guys? Pam Bundy is most definitely playing hardball with the House committee.
Over now to Rex Superman.
Thank you. I just want to talk about the survivors for a second. Thank you so much for your words. They're here today. They were with us in Palm Beach a few weeks ago when we had a hearing there, and they've asked the Department of Justice repeatedly to meet with them. They've asked repeatedly to release certain files to them, at least, such as their witness statements. And so we asked Pam Bondi about that today. She said it wouldn't be appropriate to meet with them for some reason. She said she doesn't recall anything about them asking for their witness statements. She's forgotten all about all of their requests, even their public letters. It seems as though she was ignoring survivors this whole time, which is pretty astounding to me. So I also asked her pretty basic questions about whether she knew about any effort to look for Donald Trump's name in the files before they were released. And she says she doesn't recall. And so I think it wasn't that long ago before they were releasing the files, yet somehow she doesn't recall things that happened about 6 months ago. And then finally, going back to Ghislaine Maxwell, she said she wasn't involved at all in the process.
Pam Bundy playing hardball for real. She said, "I do not recall the certain questions on a case that she's been working on." Yeah, she most definitely knew exactly what was going on, and she refused to answer anything about Trump, guys. She basically didn't answer much at all, seeing that with her own words, quote unquote, she wasn't under oath. So therefore, she she picked and chose which questions she wanted to talk about and what she didn't want to talk about.
Moving her to another prison, but she wasn't sure if that new prison was even a lower security prison, which factually it is. She also thinks that the Bureau of Prisons is doing a great job, and she said that these things happen all the time because you want to protect some of these folks in prison. Well, that's true, but we really need to protect Ghislaine Maxwell. Right after she just talked to Todd Blanche about the Epstein files, seemed too coincidental, but again, she doesn't recall a lot of other things. It was a really unimpressive and disappointing interview today, but not surprising to us. We're not going to stop our investigation. I'm going to hand it over to Yasmin Ansari.
Thank you. Today's ridiculous charade has made astonishingly clear that the United States Department of Justice has been weaponized by Donald Trump to ensure that the most massive cover-up in American history is carried out. And this is being enabled by Republicans in Congress, led by Republican Chairman James Comer and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. This entire Epstein investigation led by Chairman Comer has been absurd. We have two legal subpoenas against former Attorney General Pam Bondi. She is supposed to be here under oath today on video, answering questions for the American people about her role and the direct hand that she had in this cover-up. Instead, she is deflecting, she is refusing to answer questions, and she continues to refuse to answer specific questions about the President of the United States. It is so clear that whether it be Pam Bondi, whether it be Chairman Comer, whether it be Mike Johnson, the entire party is terrified of Donald Trump and his retaliation as it pertains to the cover-up of the Epstein files. It's unacceptable. It is notable that she continues to blame Todd Blanche and Kash Patel. We, of course, want to speak to them, but I think what I want to make clear to the American public and to everybody, and to the survivors especially, is that we are not going to give up on this. I think Republicans believe that they just kind of carry out these nonsense transcribed interviews and don't show up here today, that we will forget about this. We are just getting started as it pertains to accountability and justice for the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and any other rich and powerful person in this country who perpetrated these crimes. I'm going to hand it over to Congressman Mitt.
Thank you very much. Congressman Dave Min out of California 47. And yes, I have an election in 4 days, very important one. Robert Garcia and I have our primary elections on Tuesday of next week. But I'm here rather than in my district because this is important. We looked the survivors in the eye last year and made a promise to them that we would try to find justice, find transparency. Republicans also looked these women in the eye and did not follow through. It's a shame that James Comer is the only Republican here today because this is the biggest cover-up in history. This should not be a partisan issue. Now, as a former law professor, as a lawyer, I just want to note a couple things that struck out to me. One, the fact that she is appearing as a voluntary witness today, voluntary interview, is important because she is claiming that she's not complying with the subpoena. She's claiming the subpoena doesn't apply to her because she's no longer with the Department of Justice. But at the same time, as has been noted, you have two DOJ attorneys in there. If it's a personal interview voluntarily done, why is the DOJ so heavily involved? It doesn't make any sense unless you think about it as a cover-up. The second point I want to make, we got a pretty important insight today into the flimsy basis on which they're not turning over 3 million documents right now. They claimed earlier that Pam Bondi claimed that documents that were related to any decisions to prosecute or not prosecute were being withheld. That is all the witness interviews, is all the evidence gathered by the FBI. There's a reason we don't have the smoking guns. We don't have the video evidence. We don't have the witness interviews because they're claiming that's all privileged. And that is a bunch of bullshit, pardon my language. Any lawyer will tell you that our subpoena, whether it's the oversight subpoena or the Epstein Files Transparency Act, specifically applies to these types of documents. We don't have the real information here because they're claiming it's all privileged. And that is something that we need to get to the bottom of. This, I think, actually exposed a lot of what they're doing right now. We need those documents. This should give us the basis to overturn them. And I'll just echo what everyone else is saying in there. It's a sham in there. They are not answering any questions. And with that, I want to turn it over to my friend, James Walkinshaw.
Wow. Remember when Ghislaine Maxwell pulled that same stunt? They did a deposition on her and she answered not one question. Now Pam Bondi basically doing the same thing.
There's a
terrible and tragic irony at play this week, because behind these closed doors, the Department of Justice is continuing to cover up and stonewall the courageous Epstein survivors like Liz here. At the same time, the same Department of Justice, led by Harmeet Dillon and others, Todd Blanche, has launched an investigation into E. Jean Carroll and those who supported her successful legal effort that found Donald Trump liable of sexual assault. So the message to survivors of sexual assault from this administration and this Department of Justice, sadly, is quite clear this week. I want to share one piece of information, one question that the former Attorney General did answer. She was asked specifically about Donald Trump, President Trump's awareness of Epstein's crimes before they became public knowledge. She had the opportunity to say Donald Trump certainly wasn't aware of those crimes. She had the opportunity to say, I know Donald Trump, and if he was aware of those crimes, he would have done something. Instead, she said, I don't know. She also said, quote, this is a direct quote, I'm not certain of the extent of his knowledge. I think that's a perfect example.
You're not certain of the extent of his knowledge. Why you didn't ask him? You know what I'm saying? Or dig into finding out how extensive his, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on is most definitely a cover up. Hell, the other might think he's giving you orders. Yeah, okay. See how that does, how that works out for him, Mike. Yeah, man. So yeah, she's saying she doesn't know the extent of Trump's involvement. Wow.
As to why we need Pam Bondi under oath in a real deposition for the camera so the American people can see and hear her answers to our questions for themselves. I'll turn it over to the ranking.
Well, a couple questions that we're going to go. It's continuing, so we got to keep going. So a couple questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member. So is your next step to try to subpoena Todd Blanche to compel his testimony? And if so, do you have the votes?
Well, the request is going in today to Chairman Comer to have Todd Blanche come in. It's clear that after this testimony, that is where a lot of the information is. And so we're going to, if he doesn't do it, we're going to force a subpoena and try to get votes, but he's got to come in.
Kash Patel's name was also mentioned. Will there be a subpoena for him as well?
Kash Patel is number 2 on the list. So Kash Patel was multiple times that we had questions about the FBI, the way the files were redacted. Why
they want Kash Patel too, guys.
Messy, and why there was doxing that happened in certain cases, survivors. Finger was pointed back at Kash Patel, and so we have questions for Kash Patel as well. Yes. Well, first let's be really clear. It's bizarre that the DOJ is also, someone from the DOJ, a high-ranking official, is also acting now as personal counsel to Ms. Bondi. And so the fact that the DOJ is essentially stopping Ms. Bondi from answering questions and interjecting, particularly around President Trump, is incredibly concerning. And the fact that it's being allowed by Chairman Comer is also as concerning. She stopped Ms. Bondi multiple times from answering questions and interjected multiple times, especially as related to President Trump. One last question.
What is oversight against our next steps to compel more release of Epstein files?
Look, I think there are still 50% of the documents have not been released to the public or the Congress. We're going to continue to get those. That's breaking the law, the Transparency Act, and the subpoena. And of course, we have additional subpoena ideas on the way. We're going to go back in, guys. Thank you very much.
All right. So that was a couple of words, from one of the survivors and some of the Congress people that was present while Pam Bondi was giving her deposition, guys. All right. So let's go here, guys. Let's go here and get a couple of more. Let's go.
The Attorney General said, the former Attorney General, was that they had turned over all the documents that they can legally turn over. Now, we're going to find out. Those are the questions that we're going to have. We're going to go the first hour. What documents remain? Why haven't they been turned over? We're going to try to determine whether or not there could be more documents legally turned over.
Does
I
that
want
answer-
every document. I don't want anything held back. And I think the majority of the committee is the same way.
Does that answer satisfy you though? If some documents
They say they want all the
Well, I don't
documents.
know. We're going to find out, and we'll come out and tell you what she said. We'll release all the transcripts, and if anyone is lying to Congress, that's a felony. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think this is voluntary when she was subpoenaed. Are you describing it as voluntary after the subpoena?
well, she's coming in. She didn't do like the Clintons and take 7 months to come in. I mean, this is she could have fought it. She could have fought it.
But she's running a department. There are just a dozen leads in the files, and these people cannot be brought in under transcribed interviews. Can you ensure that they would please be brought in under oath?
Well, if you lie to Congress, it's a felony. So it's we're bringing them in. We're bringing people in that have never been brought in before. Most of the people, what I find fascinating about this is we brought in Epstein's top assistant, we brought in Epstein's lawyer, and we brought in Epstein's accountant. They were never interviewed by the people who were supposedly investigating Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. How do you not interview those three people?
But these people need to speak under oath.
Yeah, we're
Chairman
gonna
Comer,
line of this.
can you assure us that today we will get information from Pam Bondi about why the files were released in the manner that they were released, specifically the redaction process? Survivors' names over and over and over were exposed, yet we see time and time again perpetrators' names have been redacted when they shouldn't have been.
Well,
Are we going to get some answers about
I
that?
hope so. Those are questions we're gonna ask.
He's talking to the survivors, guys. The survivors are asking questions.
And we're doing this. We want justice for the survivors. We do. We've got Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert and you got the Democrat members. Everyone has gone to great lengths to try to get this far. And I hope that you all will see. Many of these people have never been interviewed before. I don't know how that can even be possible. So we're going to bring them in, and we're releasing every transcript. You'll know everything that's been asked, and if there are questions at the conclusion of this that weren't asked that you all felt should be asked, then let us know, and we will get those questions answered. We're going to do everything in our ability.
Chairman, bottom line, Epstein is gone, but there are many people that were on the island. There are many people that were involved that have not been brought to justice. Is that what you're hoping to bring?
We're going to do everything we can. We want to bring people to justice. If anyone was involved in these hideous crimes, they should be held accountable. We're doing everything we can. And remember, these crimes occurred decades ago, some of them. But all along the way, I think the one thing that we can say with confidence as far as the survivors were failed by the government. And I hope that we can do the best that we can do in getting answers and getting the truth to the American people, trying to provide some type of justice for the survivors. And if there's any way possible to hold people accountable, that's what we want to see happen. So,
Really appreciate
well,
your
we
office. office.
thank you for being here. And again, we will continue communications. And if there are questions that aren't asked, anything you're not satisfied, let us know. And we'll do everything in our ability to get answers from you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all.
Ladies, are you satisfied with what he said?
Well, yes, I appreciate that they were bringing in people that the government.
The survivors, guys. We're gonna have words from this survivor here right after this, right after they do this speaking right here.
Has not brought in before, and that the Department of Justice and FBI were not willing to take these leads. There are leads. And so we're hoping to get to some truth and accountability. This is what matters. The American public and we deserve the truth. That's it. That's all about the truth.
And again, there are a number of people out there that have never been interviewed, that have never been brought to justice.
Yeah.
And you want
Yeah.
to see that happen, every single one of them.
Every single one of them. And if they say, I don't remember, we don't believe them because we remember. And those questions need to be asked again. And if there's a deflection, we are going to get to the bottom of this. Us as survivors, we deserve the truth, and so does everybody else.
All right. So we got a few words from the survivors, guys. We already seen what was about to take place there. Let's get into one of the survivor story, guys, that she basically told. The one that was just standing there a second ago, she most definitely spoke about Pam Bundy potentially being used as an scapegoat. She doesn't feel like Bundy should be used as a scapegoat, guys. You know, she wants the real bad guys to be in trouble. Check this out.
And power protected by the very system that was supposed to protect us. We are demanding real prosecution, no sealed deals, immunity, or exceptions, regardless of wealth, title, or connections. If these men had not targeted us, we would have never walked to that door. We would have continued our teenagers' activities. Our future would have been different. We deserve justice. We deserve closure for ourselves and for every family that has carried this weight alongside us. The United States is losing respect globally, and those responsible are still protected by the system. We are not going away, and everyone in the government will show us exactly who they are, people of justice or people protecting power. Thank you.
We're happy to take a couple of questions if you have them.
The Epstein survivors, guys.
Were you satisfied with, you had Comer saying that they've now conducted 13 interviews related to the Epstein investigation. Were you satisfied with that response, and what do you make, since you're saying in the last 6 months you really haven't seen any progress?
I mean, I'll start and then you guys can jump in, but we have met with Chairman Comer's office. We think that this is just the beginning, and we are grateful that he has taken this immensely seriously, which he has. But we know that this is one step in a marathon, and the government needs to get to business, because there's a lot of information that needs to be uncovered. There's a lot of leads that need to be followed, and there are a lot of people that need to be brought to accountability.
Sarah Kellen reportedly named several men that she said had abused her. Do you have any indication that there's been any investigation into any of the men she named in the interview?
We don't have that information.
Has any investigations been started?
We don't have that information either.
Why do you think that the former Attorney General won't do this in public, won't do it in a formal setting, and won't do it on a video?
I don't know. I really hope that we are not using Pam Bondi as a scapegoat, because I fear that everything is going to fall on her shoulders when Todd Blanche had quite a lot to do with this. He is not the choice I think any of us
These are the survivors, guys.
After he moved Ghislaine Maxwell to a lower security penitentiary. She's basically at a country club, and there's never been an answer for that. So a lot of the time I feel that Todd Blanche is actually more dangerous in a lot of ways than Bondi. So I hope that they both work together and answer some serious questions.
How about the FBI director, Kash Patel? Do you have any thoughts about his behavior?
I think, okay, so what we're hearing from congressional leaders is that the files are coming to them redacted. So even though they're saying that Congress can go in and see the unredacted files, that's not really true, because they're redacting them within the FBI. So I actually feel like Kash Patel has exactly the same amount of questions to answer as Pam Bondi.
And you would like to see him testify in public?
Yes, I would.
The other thing that's just worth saying is that there was an internal memo within DOJ that I think was dated July 24th with a list of, here we go, with a list of people that caused harm to some of these survivors. On, I believe, September 17th, Kash Patel spoke in front of Congress and said that there are no credible leads. I'd like to know what transpired between this date with this document and September 17th, because it would seem that there would have to be a tremendous amount of investigation into all of these people, and that's not information that we currently have. So we would love for him to come in and give us some explanations.
If you stop this partying and actually show up for us, that would be nice.
I think I'll take more. Yeah, I just, you guys can step in, please. But, something that we did get out, pretty much the only thing that we got out of the last bonding hearing was that she said that investigations had been started. And all of us turned around to each other and said, wait, who, what, where, and why, where? And then she was fired. So, we really have answers on that too. We hope that there were investigations that were started, but we're getting so lost in translation. And I think that the survivors really need to be included in this entire conversation, because we have done so much work as far as bringing leads to the FBI, telling our stories over and over again, in giving testimony recently. I mean, it's nonstop. So we do hope that there are investigative leads. Yeah.
What do you make of the fact that Bondi, who's obviously left DOJ, is being represented by a DOJ attorney?
We couldn't hear. I couldn't hear it. What do you think about Bondi being represented? We don't even understand why she needed an attorney to come here today. She didn't need one. She just has to speak the truth, right? I feel like that's all she has to do, is to be honest, to be transparent. I think that's all we need here. It's just helping the cover up at this point.
I think that for a former attorney general to be represented by current government counsel is something that should also raise eyebrows and cause concern.
And also the timing of even being here on a, yeah.
We listening to
Just the
words
sheer timing.
from the survivors of Epstein, and basically their feelings on how they feel about Bundy's testimony or non-testimony in front of the House committee today, guys. Make sure you're double tapping that screen if you have not. That's how you hit the like on your mobile device, or click the three dots in the right hand corner, hit that thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new, as we find out everything about Pam Bundy's testimony to Congress today, or lack thereof.
We're here on Memorial Day week when nothing has been in session, and it's all of those distraction tactics, right? There were so many people that were in their home states that had to fly back for this testimony. So the fact that it's closed door, she has counsel that is problematic to say the least. There are quite a few issues with the way this whole thing has been structured, but at least she's here. So that's a step in the right direction.
Are any of you today aware of survivors that are not here today that have been in touch with the FBI or DOJ?
FBI. I mean, we've given statements at the FBI. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, many of us have spoken to the FBI over the years, right? That's you're talking 30 years, right? We know that the first report was 1996 with Maria Farmer. So yes, the FBI, totally. As far as the DOJ goes, nothing.
Thank you.
Can I just take a moment? I think that what we're not understanding in all of this press coverage is what we're looking at. What we're looking at is not the names of powerful men. What we're looking at is a sex trafficking operation that operated both in the United States and internationally. And so what we need to do as a nation is refocus. Our Department of Justice is in charge of handling crimes and protecting survivors and victims of crimes. And I think that that's really getting lost in all of the political discourse about this case. And I really it's important for me that we bring our attention back to what we're looking at. We're looking at a crime, and it's a crime of sex trafficking.
Any comments ahead of Bill Gates' same situation behind closed doors in a couple of weeks?
I mean, everybody on these lists should be in that room. That's for sure. But they should be in the room with a camera and sworn under oath. We don't care if it's Bill Gates. I could run through these names. Every one of them should be in that room. But to have them in that room,
every one of them should be in there,
where we are not actually seeing what is transpiring. That is a problem, not just for these survivors, for survivors everywhere, and for the American public. And that needs to change.
I think also, what we've seen so far in these hearings, we've seen a lot of perjury in these hearings happen already. That lead that I was holding up from Richard Kahn earlier, it clearly states that he knew that he was withdrawing large sums of money. So we're having these hearings and we're talking and asking our congressional leaders, what happens? What is the consequence when we find out that they are purging themselves, right? And there really isn't a consequence. What they're saying is they'll bring them back in. So we're stuck in a loop. Where is the consequence? When do we finally hold somebody in contempt? When do we finally get a hearing that is an actual sworn deposition, which is all we've been asking for?
You're saying that Richard's not perjured because of the...
That's all they've been asking for, guys.
I think
Some
we
transparency.
need to investigate it. I think it's an investigative lead. I'm not saying that he did or did not at this point, because I'm not a lawyer. I am not in that world. I'm a dance teacher, right? But there is evidence that is the case. So I would hope that our congressional officials would really take that lead very seriously and look into it. And that's just one lead of many. Thank you.
And I would like to read a lead. This is from the New York FBI to the New York FBI, dated July 24th, 2025. I will be in the office within the next 2 hours and will handle task 1, from redacted to redacted. Why are these people redacted? That's the first question I have. JE task 7/24. Ladies, sorry for the timing of this email. Just saw the late text on my phone and don't want to forget to send first thing, redacted. If you are in early, would you please handle task 1? Please copy me and redacted. Redacted. Let's work on manipulating the spreadsheet we have for number 2. Tasks. 1. Confirm we interviewed cellmate of first suicide attempt. Apparently, lawyer at the time made an allegation call. Mate tried to kill Epstein and send ASC redacted the 302. Task 2. Take these names and build out new spreadsheet along the Durag on them. But it just says Durag. Trump, Weinstein, Prince Andrew, Glenn Dubin, Jess Staley, Leon Black, Les Wexner, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, Howard Lutnick, Ponzi scheme and money laundering, Alexander Guest, Jean-Luc Brunel, William Barr for being present when a girl was raped.
Wow.
This is the FBI to the FBI. What is the FBI and the DOJ? What are they doing?
They're covering up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're covering up. That's what they doing. What are you talking about? Yeah, they most definitely are covering up, man. You know what I'm saying? That was the survivors there, basically telling their story. And prior to Bundy getting up here saying what she didn't say, there was also another interview conducted with a survivor. Let's go here.
As former Attorney General Bondi testifies about the Epstein files, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse are demanding accountability. Let's bring in Epstein survivor Danielle Bensky for more on that. Danny, thanks for coming on. I know this is a difficult topic. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
So earlier, you and other survivors tried to confront Bondi as she arrived on the Hill. What happened there, and what did you want to say to her?
I mean, we have always just wanted some baseline humanity from Pam Bondi. We wanted her to turn around and see our faces. She had 3 opportunities at the last hearing, and she didn't take a single one. So it just felt really...
And she most definitely wasn't going to take this one today. This is Bundy entering the Congress building to give her deposition, guys, today.
Important to
And
remind...
she was confronted by the survivors, and she still wouldn't look at them.
her that we are real people. She has worked with survivors in the past, so I hope that she understands the depth of our pain and the depth of our fight. And so, yes, we did try to sort of like push our way through just to catch her eye for a moment, and she didn't acknowledge us whatsoever.
She sure didn't. She kept walking straight,
Survivors
guys.
have criticized the Justice Department's release of improperly redacted files. Those files expose some survivors' identities. It also concealed other information. What are you hoping lawmakers ask Bondi about that?
Yeah, I think we have three different things that we really need to focus on here. And one is the release of all the files and how these files were released after, there was a deadline. We were told that there would be this slow rollout because they were protecting victims. My lawyer with another lawyer compiled a list of 350 names that the DOJ was given initially.
350 names.
There were names to watch out for. And of course, they were not watched out for. In fact, there were 3 rollouts containing all of our information. And so the release and how the release happened is one issue. And then the redactions are its own separate issue. I think we saw time and time again perpetrators be protected and victims just be exposed to the point where nude photos have been exposed of victims. So basically our government is providing porn out there in the world. So there needs to be some accountability for that. And then there's a third bucket that is investigations. We need to see investigative lead, or we have investigative leads, and we need to see the investigations start.
Now, in her opening statement, Bondi says, to the best of her knowledge, the department produced everything required under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. She says there were redaction errors, but since day one of this process, that this department has been committed to accountability and transparency. What's your response to that?
I don't think we've seen any accountability from this DOJ. Survivors have been asking to meet with the DOJ for months. We've written letters to Todd Blanche. We've written letters to Pam Bondi, and never once has the DOJ committed to meeting with at least my group of survivors that I know.
He appears to be laying blame on her successor, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, saying she delegated oversight of that review process to him when he was her deputy. Now, Blanche has acknowledged the release of sensitive victim information was horrible and inexcusable. Those are his words. What more do you want to see from him now that he's acting AG?
Well, that's actually kind of surprising to hear that he did say that, because when I was listening to him at a time, he was saying that the files weren't mishandled at all, which was highly confusing to survivors because we know that there was such sensitive information released. But I do hope that he investigates. I worry that Pam Bondi is going to be used as the scapegoat. And I think that Todd Blanche has just as much to answer for here.
Right there, she said she feels like Pam Bondi is going to be used as a scapegoat, when really she feels like Todd Blanche has just as biggest part in this as she does.
He was the reason why Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a lower security penitentiary. And survivors have never been apprised on what happens. So we just all deserve answers. America deserves answers. And the other survivors that are not Epstein and Maxwell survivors are always looking to this case. So we just need more from our Department of Justice.
We're not going to get to see Bondi's testimony because it's not on camera, but we will get a transcript at some point. What are you looking for in that transcript once it's released?
Process. We just always want to know about the process. And just a note about the transcription. These transcribed interviews are not enough, right? We need filmed, sworn depositions that are under oath. And that is something that survivors have been asking for. We have met with, just Chairman Comer spoke earlier in the hall, and we've met with members of his team, and they've been so wonderful with us. And to hear that he does feel that the survivors have been failed time and time again, was enlightening to hear. We just hope that we can now push a little bit more and start those investigations.
All right, Danielle Bensky, we appreciate your time today. So sorry for what you've gone through, but we appreciate you sharing your story with us.
All right, so word from an Epstein survivor, guys, about how she feels this whole situation is being handled. How do y'all feel like this situation is being handled? Is this the biggest cover-up that we have seen when it comes to on this scale? It's like, man, for some reason they are most definitely trying to keep all of these files from coming out by any means necessary.
Democrats who were in the room are using words like combative and evasive to describe former Attorney General Pam Bondi's Oversight Committee interview on Capitol Hill that just wrapped up.
It is clear that this interview is a smokescreen to try to show the American people that they are complying while they are not.
It's a cover-up in broad daylight. And what they're hoping will happen is we'll walk out of here and we'll stop, but we're not going to stop. We are committed to this.
Not only will the oversight Dems, but also the American people will not back down. The survivors have not and will not back down. And it's important that we continue to keep this pressure on them.
Joining me now, one of the Democratic lawmakers who took part in that interview, Arizona Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari. Thanks so much for coming on the show. You spent hours inside that room. Questions for Pam Bondi. Did this move the investigation forward at all?
Thank you so much for having me. One, I will start by saying, yes, I do think it is moving the investigation forward, and I'll explain that. But I also want to be clear that Pam Bondi is not complying with the subpoena that was issued to her, which means that she should have been here today under oath, testifying in front of the American public with the video. What happened today is what I believe we learned is that Pam Bondi actually put a lot of the responsibility, actually all of the responsibility, on now acting Attorney General Todd Blanche.
Todd Blanche is his fault.
In regard to the processes for releasing any of the Epstein files, the decision making about redactions or not redacting information, she put all of that on Todd Blanche, which of course we know is Donald Trump's former personal attorney. So to me, I think what this demonstrates is confirmation that there is a massive cover-up underway at the direction of Donald Trump, which Pam Bondi refused to answer any questions pertaining to the president.
So if it's being put on the shoulders of Todd Blanche, do you believe that there will be a subpoena issued to him? And would you have any expectations that he would be any more forthcoming than you think she was?
Well, that is our first step today. The Oversight Democrats are writing to Chairman Comer demanding that Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel be subpoenaed immediately. She also, Ms. Bondi also invoked Kash Patel's name multiple times because of, some of the FBI's role in all of this. Now, do I believe Todd Blanche will be forthcoming? No, I do not. I think every administration official in the Trump administration has lied over and over and over again. We had our Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, a couple of weeks ago. He was just lying through his teeth. I think Pam Bondi today, the fact that Justice, senior officials like
Lutnick was just lying through his teeth. Yeah, he most definitely was. That was the one that was saying, hey, I'm not dealing with Epstein anymore. And then all of a sudden they found out that he was going to the island with his family and everything.
Harmeet Dillon were sitting by her side, whispering in her ear, telling her, in certain cases what to say or not say. That's weaponization of the Department of Justice at the hands of the president. There was no need for Department of Justice officials to be sitting in the room today when Pam Bondi herself is no longer a representative of the United States government. So the concerns remain, but here's the thing. We are not going to back down from this. I think Republicans maybe think people will get tired or move on. There's no moving on. I mean, the floodgates have opened. We are very serious about getting justice for the over 1,000 victims and making sure that anybody who was involved or enabled or perpetrated these crimes is actually and finally held accountable.
So understanding that, and we've heard this from many of the survivors who we've spoken to on this program, that they believe that the Democrats have been consistent, they have been pushing hard. But when you say there's no moving on, it seems as though, I think to a lot of casual observers out there, voters who may even support what you're doing, that not much is getting accomplished. By your own admission and others who were in that room, she did not comply with the subpoena. There is not a great expectation that other members of the administration would do it. You didn't even have other Republican members besides Chairman Comer even showing up. So if someone says to you, we understand that your motivation is good, but this is turning into a performance, What do you say to them?
Wow.
What are you getting out
A
of this?
performance.
You know, I would say a year ago, we wouldn't have in our wildest dreams thought that we would have any of the Epstein files released. Now, in the year 2026, we have half of the files released, and we do have a lot more information through these interviews that have been conducted, through the survivors who have come forward since all of this began, that we never had before. We know that many people were involved in these crimes, and while we're still fighting for the remainder of the files and for accountability, we have come a very long way. Now, all of that has been while we've been in the minority as well. So I think that's, the subpoenas that we've been able to issue, the fact that we've had, so many interviews already while being in the minority. The moment Democrats on the Oversight Committee are in the majority, you can rest assured that we will subpoena all of these individuals again. We will force them to come forward and testify under oath. We will actually one day have a Department of Justice that we will demand goes and investigates the people who were implicated in these crimes. This is really just the beginning. Survivors have been waiting decades for justice, and I understand and empathize so deeply with them on this. And it may take a little bit longer, but we've made a lot of progress.
Congressman Yasamin Ansari, who was part of the group that was questioning her today. Thank you so much for coming on and helping us understand what went on inside that room.
All right, hold on. Hold up. Yeah, so let's go here with this whole entire Bundy situation, man. It's a lot going on, guys. It's a lot going on. Bundy most definitely, look, she got a bandage on her neck. Remember, she was diagnosed with cancer, guys. She was supposed to have a surgery. She showed up today with a bandage on her neck, guys. Oh no, wrong one. I bad.
The House Oversight Committee, where she forcefully defended the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. What did you ask her? What did she say?
Well, first of all, on a human level, I wished her well in her recovery from cancer. What we wanted here was just answers to help the survivors. And what she told us is that Todd Blanche was really managing the whole thing. So we need to ask Todd Blanche.
Put it all on Blanche.
She also told us, surprisingly, that the FBI it scrubbed a lot of the documents or held a lot of the documents before they got to the Justice Department.
Scrubbed
that
them.
means
Wow.
we need to ask Kash Patel, why were those documents?
The FBI scrubbed. She said the FBI scrubbed some of the documents before they ever even made it to the DOJ. Wow. Wow. They most definitely gonna want to speak to Kash Patel.
Redacted or what documents were missing. And then finally, when pressed on whether some of the individuals should be prosecuted, whether they should be investigated, she deferred to Jay Clayton, who's the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. And so we need to ask him, what is going to happen to the people who raped or abused or trafficked the victims?
Did she have anything to say about what kinds of documents, what sort of information the FBI withheld from DOJ?
She did not. But what was very surprising is she said that some of the documents were withheld by the FBI. As you know, Casey, because you've been covering this for a long time, in March of 2025, the FBI first scrubbed those documents. And the law that Thomas Massie and I passed, the Epstein Transparency Act, required all of the documents to be released, particularly the survivors' statements to the FBI in 302 forms where they name names. It turns out that when the Justice Department got those documents from the FBI, a lot of had already been redacted or missing. And so some of the answers that we need are with the FBI director.
So does it stand to reason, or is it your understanding then that the FBI withheld interviews with survivors where they talked about the people who abused them and named their names? That's part of what the FBI withheld?
They either withheld them, there's some documents that were missing, or they redacted them so that by the time the Justice Department got them, they were already all redacted. Now, the Justice Department did additional redactions, and they showed members of Congress unredacted versions of what the Justice Department had redacted. But even members of Congress were seeing documents fully blanked out, which the FBI had done. Why does this matter? Because the survivors named the names in the 302 documents that the FBI had already redacted.
And did she have any explanation for why Blanche was so involved, why he had so much control, especially considering it was she who initially held those public events where she spoke with people who were invested in it, and she went and famously said that she had the client list on her desk?
She just said that this is the responsibility she gave Todd Blanche. Look, she wanted to say this is Todd Blanche, this is Kash Patel, this is Jay Clayton, which means that they need to come before the committee and answer questions. I have much less of a interest in making this.
She basically saying, man, it's anybody besides me. Hey, man, we're a couple of likes away from 200, guys. If you have not double tapped that screen, that's how you hit the like button, or click the three dots in the right-hand corner. Hit that thumbs up. Let's get the likes past 200, guys. Shout out to everybody in the building.
Out the people in the Trump administration. My concern is, why are the people who raped, abused, and sex trafficked these survivors still out there facing no consequences? I get texts, Casey, almost every day from a survivor saying the names are in the files. Why are they not being investigated? Why are they not being prosecuted? And I feel a personal responsibility to the survivors. And so this is not gotcha. I wasn't out there to try to get Pam Bondi. I'm trying to understand, what is it going to take to get investigations and prosecutions to move forward?
So speaking of these names, you have worked extensively with Republican Congressman Thomas Massie on this issue. And he, of course, lost his primary after the president targeted him in his Republican primary. Massie has since said that he plans to name names before he leaves office. Do you have any idea what the plans are for that? Do you plan to participate? Do you know how he might do that?
I do not know. I haven't talked to him about this matter since he lost. The reality is that the survivors have told us through lawyers some of the names. My view is it'd be much better to get the documents out rather than relying on survivors to do that. But I will talk to Thomas. What I can tell you about Thomas is he's got 7 months still in Congress, and he's as committed to this issue as I am. He's had survivors break down in tears in his office, and this is personal for him. And we're going to do everything we can to expose the people who did wrong.
Outside of the room, a group of women who survived abuse by Jeffrey Epstein called on Bondi to provide the public with more information, including why the Justice Department says there's no need for any further investigation of Epstein or his alleged accomplices.
The Department of Justice is simultaneously telling the American people that there are no additional investigative leads worth pursuing. We can see with our own eyes when we look at the Epstein files that this is not true. These files contain leads, names, connections, friendships, patterns, witnesses, travel records, financial relationships, and institutional failures. In any other sex trafficking case of this magnitude, those leads would be aggressively pursued. But in this case, they have not been. And as citizens of this country, we should all be asking why.
Casey, as you know, this was a much anticipated appearance by Bondi because she has faced a torrent of criticism for her handling of all things Epstein, from her promise to release a client list that DOJ eventually said didn't exist, to the release of the Epstein files that failed to redact victim names and other sensitive information. The Democrats say behind closed doors, she tried to place a lot of the blame for these mistakes on the now acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche. Let's take a listen.
it is clear in just this part of the interview that she continues to push all of the investigation and the blame on acting AG Todd Blanche. She said, and I quote, "Acting AG Blanche was managing the entire investigation," end quote. And what you're going to hear in that interview and what she's saying here in her words and remarks is that it was Todd Blanche, the current acting AG, that was leading the Epstein investigation. And quite frankly, all of the mistakes that we saw, the redactions, not protecting survivors, she continues to push that back onto the acting AG, Todd Blanche, who, by the way, was Donald Trump's former personal lawyer.
Now, after the hearing wrapped, Bondi shot back on social media saying that was not true. And instead, she praised Blanche's Herculean efforts and also had kind words for his current performance as acting attorney general. Now, she's the 13th witness that the committee has interviewed so far in its investigation into the Epstein case. Now, it does appear, though, they are turning their sights to Blanche and potentially FBI Director Kash Patel to have them come in and answer questions. But as you noted,
they most definitely want to hear what they have to say. Seeing that that Pam Bundy told them, you know, basically go ask Todd Blanche. He was over the whole thing. You know, he has more knowledge than me. I wonder why she threw him under the bus, guys. She threw him right under the bus. She did. And people are talking about it.
Reporter Ken Galanian, former Biden Justice Department official Anthony Coley on set with me, and former U.S. Attorney and MS Now legal analyst Joyce Vance also here in the studio. Ken, I'm just going to start where we ended this conversation last hour with Congressman Subramaniam, who told me so far Bondi has only faced softball questions at that point from Republicans, but he was also ready to expand on who Bondi was really spending time talking about. I want to play for you just part of that interview.
One thing I would say is I do want to talk to Todd Blanche now. I'd like to subpoena Todd Blanche. I'd also like to subpoena Kash Patel as well, just based on what I've heard so far.
She's talking about Kash Patel in that room?
He has come up, yes.
Notable that he's saying that Kash Patel has come up, that Todd Blanche has come up, that those are two people that Bondi seems to be saying, well, I delegated that to Blanche, I delegated that to Kash. What does that signify to you?
Yeah, good morning, Ali. Look, those of us in Washington may have heard the sound of a large bus driving over a large object about an hour ago, and that was Pam Bondi throwing her former deputy Todd Blanche, now the acting attorney general,
throwing him under the bus, guys.
Proverbially. Let me just read the statement that came from her in her opening remarks. She said, as the head of a large department with broad responsibilities, I did not lead every aspect of this effort or conduct that document review myself. I delegated oversight of this process to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And that's actually been pretty clear for some time. I've been wondering myself why this committee wasn't trying to talk to Todd Blanche instead of Pam Bondi, who in many ways was a figurehead Attorney General. Todd Blanche ran a lot of the DOJ while Pam Bondi was the Attorney General. But nonetheless, there are some important questions for Pam Bondi. We all remember the moment when she didn't even want to turn around and face some of the Epstein survivors in the congressional hearing. She just handled this whole thing in a very odd way. And of course, we all remember when she said that the Epstein client list was sitting on her desk when there were, in fact, there really isn't an Epstein client list. And then she handed out those binders of documents that really didn't contain anything to right-wing influencers. So there are some important questions for her. But I think the more pertinent questions really will be for Todd Blanche. And the biggest questions about the DOJ rollout, like, I mean, this DOJ, it's not really fair to ask why they didn't prosecute particular figures in the Epstein matter. Yeah. Those questions are really better put to Alex Acosta and people who handled this 10 years ago. But you can fairly ask about how they handled the rollout, why the information of victims was exposed, why certain documents pertaining to Trump were held back and then they appeared and then they were withdrawn again, whether there was an effort to protect Donald Trump. All those are fair game, and they will, I'm sure, be asked of very many people in this administration.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that several lawmakers plan to ask about. We are currently in the Democratic hour of questioning, should go on for another 20 or so minutes, is my understanding, according to sources. But Anthony, I think the big question, too, is when you talk about Bondi, I love the way that Ken says this, driving a bus over Todd Blanche, rhetorically speaking right now. it begs the question of, DOJ, Mary McCord, who was here an hour ago, knows DOJ. It's not crazy that the AG would delegate this to her deputy attorney general, but then it starts begging questions about, okay, well then who should we even be asking why the transparency was so botched in the first place? Because that defies the law that Congress passed.
Right, and the buck does stop with the head of the agency,
Totally.
right? Let's just start there. But Pam Bondi, here's what's so interesting to me, Ali Vitale, about Pam Bondi. She was once an ally for survivors. If you go back and look at her time in Florida, I see Joyce nodding her head. She led the effort to get thousands of untested rape kits tested. Like, she got funding for that. She had this accountability brand. And so my question is, and I hope what Democrats are asking in this room is, how does she go from being in the trenches, fighting alongside survivors, to now running interference against them in the White House Situation Room? I mean, Ken talked about earlier how while she was Attorney General, she held a meeting in the White House Situation Room to try to convince Republican members of Congress to not sign on to this discharge petition, right? To force the release of the Epstein files, right? Todd Blanche didn't do that. Yep. That was her. And she owes the American people an answer to that. And more importantly, she owes the survivors an answer for this, right? They just want transparency and accountability. That's what they want. And she played a role in that, no matter how she tries to whitewash it now.
Yeah, and I do think it was striking to see at the start of the day that as Chairman Comer was taking questions from reporters, as he often does before these things, the survivors themselves were there to ask Comer questions about what they wanted to see from Bondi. I also wonder, in as much as it's interesting to hear her say, no, this was all Todd Blanche, A, how does Kash Patel come up in this? That's certainly something I'm interested in. And B, doesn't it allow Bondi the ability to just sort of pass the buck and not have to engage with these questions for an interview that, frankly, there was so much stonewalling and back and forth for, it wasn't clear that Bondi was even going to come in for this interview at all.
The level of dysfunction at this Justice Department just continues to be gobsmacking. Right. I know Anthony feels the same way. Look, first, I think that we should say the Attorney General runs the organization, and it's simply not possible that a competent Attorney General wouldn't be getting daily updates on the rollout of the release of the Epstein files, both because it's an incredibly important Justice Department priority. The treatment of victims and survivors is in some ways statutorily mandated to happen according to a certain procedure, but also because politically, attorney generals do report to the president politically. It's important. So the idea that she can duck responsibility should be a non-starter. But beyond that, you ask, I think, just the right question. What's the role here for a Kash Patel or for a Todd Blanche? Because they were involved in the rollout. Congress has legitimate oversight obligations here. This was a botched rollout. They protected perpetrators. They exposed survivors. There needs to be accountability for that. It's unlikely we'll get that, frankly, in this hearing today, but it could be a start. Bondi may inadvertently reveal certain matters that could lead to other inquiries, or she may have a moment, because as Anthony says, her record as Attorney General in Florida early on, she was involved in the early days of human trafficking prosecutions, as was I, sort of on that same timeline in that part of the country. And so her shift is remarkable.
The shift is remarkable, and it's certainly something that was even pointed out when she came up to testify before the House Judiciary Committee and wouldn't even turn to look at the survivors who were sitting at the back of the room. They were quite visible, all wearing the same color T-shirts. We all know them because they've been in the public eye now for years, just trying to get accountability. And so I wonder, as Democrats and Republicans continue with this investigation with varying degrees of a desire to get to the bottom of it, what is the most substantive thread that could come out of this testimony today? Take out of it the fact that it's only transcribed, it's not on camera, like information is still information. What would be the best thing that Democrats could ask about?
I'm gonna say something that the Democratic Party probably will not like here, which is that I'm glad they are doing this, and they should try to get transparency and accountability. But the answer, the transparency and the accountability that these survivors need is not going to come out of this process. I believe firmly that they need to pass new legislation that creates something like an independent federal monitor, right, with staffing somebody like retired prosecutors and FBI agents, because what we know is that 50% of the Epstein files are still under wraps. And there is no way to confirm that the information that is under wraps is consistent with the law requiring disclosure. So DOJ itself is not an honest arbiter here, and we need an independent source, respected among both people of both parties, to actually get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, because in theory, it should be a nonpartisan thing,
It should
trying
be.
to get accountability for these survivors of sex trafficking and abuse. You know, Ken, I think the other thing that I started the day thinking about was the fact that there are two DOJ officials in the room with Bondi. They're there to be basically agents on behalf of the DOJ, because Bondi is there in her personal capacity. But if she's there in her personal capacity, it also means that she probably has her own legal representation there. Can you walk us through what's notable to you about this?
Yeah, that's actually pretty standard that the DOJ would send lawyers to represent their interests when a former official is testifying. And you're right, there's no doubt, if I were Pam Bondi, I'd have my own lawyer there as well. And for that reason, given that she's surrounded by lawyers, there's probably a lot of questions that she's not going to answer. And let's face it, the committee has very little leverage to demand those answers. She's not the attorney general anymore. But it will be interesting. No doubt we will eventually see the transcript of this hearing. It'll be interesting to see what the DOJ tried to block her from answering. Because after all, the whole point of this, as you guys are all been talking about, is transparency at this point. I mean, what's left for these survivors? Really, there aren't going to be more prosecutions. What they hope for and expect is they want the information. They want to know what secrets are buried in these files about potentially other people who may have committed wrongdoing or potential, incompetence or worse among prosecution efforts, among the Justice Department. That's what the public is owed here, and the DOJ should not be standing in the way of that. And if they are, we should all find out about it.
I think, Joyce, the other thing that a lot of attention has been paid to, perhaps rightly, is what it means that this is not the subpoena being enforced. And so it's not an under oath deposition. It is instead a transcribed interview, but you're still not allowed to lie to Congress. And so I wonder if you can help us understand the difference between lying to Congress and perjury, and why there is a difference, because many a lawyer has made it clear to me that although it seems like it's the same, it's apparently not.
Well, it's statutory, and this is a little bit of law school 101, but there's a specific statute that prohibits perjury, and it has to be a false statement made under oath with certain specifications. But there's also a more general crime in the United States Code that covers making false statements to the government. They have to be material. You have to know that they're false when you make them and intend to make a false statement. But that too can be prosecuted. You know, there's a whole lineage of those cases involving both congressional testimony, but simply being interviewed by FBI agents. I think the interesting issue here, and Ken hinted at this, is whether Pam Bondi will try to duck giving answers to sensitive questions by trying to assert a variant of the presidential immunity that Donald Trump holds, saying that it extends to her as well as his former attorney general. That's an issue that's ripe for the Supreme Court to determine, and that could get into.
It's crazy, guys. Hold on. All right, let's get that down. All right, so when it comes to Pam Bondi, guys, she most definitely went and testified, basically in front of the House committee, but she didn't answer all the questions they wanted her to answer. She said a lot of I don't knows, and I don't think so. She also declined to say anything regarding Trump. So anything they would ask her regarding Trump, she would just outright refuse to answer. It wasn't, she wasn't under oath. It wasn't recorded as far as video recordings of her saying what she's saying, but they saying that there will be transcripts, guys, that come out and show that she was being combative and non-compliant. You know, they basically saying she placed all the blame on Todd or Tom, whichever one his name is, the Blanche dude, the new head of DOJ. She blamed everything on him and said that he was hand in hand with her. You know, basically he knew everything that was going on and he was in charge of the redacting of the files, guys. So she basically said that they need to talk to him and Kash Patel, and then basically she out of it because she's no longer the head of the DOJ, guys. Yeah, that's and we heard from the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein how they felt about this whole thing being a cover-up. We also talked about Jeffrey Epstein's assistant, his personal assistant, former personal assistant, since he's deceased, basically came out and gave 3 more names for the DOJ to look into. So it looks like, you know, there's a lot of people talking. They also interviewed the last person basically to search Epstein's name, which was his correction officer that was on duty. They also got her testimony as well as the assistant. Oh yeah, let me end the poll. Hold up. Let me end this poll. All right, so out of 1,045 votes, I asked, will the files be released? 64% of y'all said no, and 36% of y'all said, hold on, yes. 36% said yes, 64% said no. So that was out of 1,000 votes, guys. So shout out to everybody who voted on the poll. The majority most definitely feels like we won't be getting these files at all or anytime soon, guys. I must say I agree, man. It's a lot of hard work going in from the people at the top, guys. Your Pam Bundys and your Donald Trumps, in my opinion, do not want these files to see the light of day, which hints to why she wouldn't basically speak on Trump's name, even though his name is reported to be in these files over 1,000 times. There's also reported to be over 1,000 victims, you know, in this whole entire situation when it comes to Epstein. But to me, it's a lot of sick individuals out there with a whole lot of money, man. Yeah, and yeah, that's just, this whole situation is just disgusting, especially when you think about all of this was done to teenagers, basically kids, guys. Just crazy, man. Some were definitely destroyed. Yeah, Kash Patel and the FBI destroying some of the documents before they even made it to the DOJ. Yeah, that's going to be a big deal. They most definitely going to want to talk to Kash Patel and Blanche, guys. You can count on that. Yeah, and it's a bunch of sick individuals, man. But anyway, I brought y'all everything that was in my title that I said I was going to bring y'all. So, man, if you don't mind, if you have not, double tap that screen, y'all. Always get in the habit of double tapping that screen. It most definitely helps out the channel. I most definitely appreciate it. You know, if you have a page and you come in, you like this content, make sure you share it out. Let them know we having the conversation about whatever it is that day. My normal days are Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Right here on Everything News. So if this is your brand of entertainment, you like to be caught up on current events and things that are going on in the U.S. as well as around the world, man, you know, or other celebrity news, most definitely tap in with me, man. Set your notification bell to all. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you are new, man. Shout out to anybody that's on the gift. Shout out to anybody that's on the super chat or a super sticker or hit the Cash App. Most definitely appreciate the support. Most definitely shout out to anybody that subscribed to the channel, old subscribers as well as new subscribers. I'm most definitely nothing without y'all. And man, shout out to all of my members, the new ones as well as the old ones, and shout out to all of my moderators for keeping this chat running smooth. I know sometimes with the different opinions being placed in the chat, it get a little chaotic. So shout out to y'all for keeping it running smooth, man. Yeah, man. I'm most definitely finna go ahead and exit stage left. Thank y'all for y'all time, man. And I encourage anybody that wants to support the channel in a different way, most definitely can grab you a membership. The memberships are available. You simply have to go to the home screen, go to my channel, guys, and click on the description box of any video, and the link to the membership is most definitely in there, guys. With that being said, we'll go ahead and make my grand exit. Shout out to y'all for rocking out with me for these 3 hours. Sidewalk Gang. Checking out. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be good. Y'all.